2017 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. If you haven't already done so and would like to pick one up and follow along with our proceedings tonight, I would encourage you to do so. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to the items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment that is under item number 5, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. At that point in time, any members of the audience who have any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things not on tonight's agenda, the protocol is to please come to the podium, tell us who you are, and we will welcome hearing from you at that time. But first, it is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, so I would ask everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That was said with enthusiasm. I hope that maintains throughout the entire meeting. I'd now like to ask our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Commissioner Earl?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight. And those are our regular council meeting minutes from our May 9th, 2017 meeting. If there are no changes, corrections, or comments to those minutes, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mayor Tully, I move that this council approve the minutes from May 9th as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. Thank you. That brings us to item 4, and I have a couple of proclamations to read tonight. First of all, one with respect to Public Works Week. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, storm sewers, street transportation, and public buildings. Whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff the Public Works Department is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work that they perform, now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim the week of May 21st through 27th, 2017 as Public Works Week in the Village of Downers Grove, and call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works, and to recognize the contribution which public works personnel make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. And I would be remiss if I didn't invite our Public Works Director, Nan Newland, to please come up and accept this proclamation. There'll be some public works things on the agenda tonight. Nan, how are you? Thank you. My privilege. Thank you very much. I know you had a 45-minute prepared speech.
I would invite everyone to come to our open house. It's going to be at our Public Works building. You find information on our website. There's also a native tree and plant sale going on, as well as rain barrels, so please check out the website for information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And whether it's fixing the streets or repairing the sidewalks or water main breaks or snow plowing, that's what Public Works does. And it's a big part of what the community delivers for the 9% of the property tax bill that we make up of. The next proclamation is equally important and more somber, and one that I hope everyone takes to heart. And it pertains to Police Week. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week on which it falls as Police Week. And whereas the members of the Downers Grove Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of residents in Downers Grove. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that members of the Downers Grove Police Department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the Downers Grove Police Department unceasingly provides a vital public service, Now therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, call upon all citizens of Downers Grove and upon all patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 14th through 20th, 2017 as Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies in which all of our people may join in commemorating police officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered and dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so, have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. And I thought I saw Chief Bluter over there. I'm going to ask Chief Bluter to come up and accept this, and then remind us of a very important event this Thursday afternoon. Chief. Thank you.
As the mayor mentioned, and thank you, Mayor, Council, for recognizing National Police Week with this proclamation. This Thursday, as part of National Police Week, we will be hosting our annual Barth Memorial Ceremony. Not only will we be honoring officers and remembering them that have lost their lives throughout this past year, but we also honor and remember the legacy that our own police officer that was murdered in 1974, Officer Barth, recognize him as well. So that'll be Thursday, 1 p.m. at First Presbyterian Church, if anybody wants to come out. The Barth family still attends. His mother will be there. She turns 100 later this year. So they really appreciate the community's support and the support of the police department. And again, we want to keep his legacy alive. If anybody wants to come out, everybody's welcome to join us at the ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I would encourage those who have not witnessed the Barth Memorial Service in the past to either do so in person, as described by Chief Bluter, or I believe we still televise it and make it available for viewing afterwards. It's quite a moving ceremony to commemorate and celebrate the life of the only police officer in Downers Grove ever to be killed in the line of duty, and it is wonderful that the tradition is carried on. His memory, he is truly not forgotten. His family comes out and shares their memories and words about Richard Barth. And we have guests attend from a number of other communities, both police and fire. It's truly a very moving ceremony, and I've been privileged to be part of it for a number of years. And I have to say that no matter how many times I am involved in it, it never, it's always very moving and quite sobering. And we always conclude the ceremony with making sure that hopefully Officer Barth will be the only and last Downers Grove police officer ever to be killed in the line of duty. So thank you for sharing those details with us, Chief. And with that, we will go to item 5, which is, as mentioned earlier, reserved for public comments of a general nature. So at this juncture, if there are any residents that have any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not on tonight's agenda, I would invite you to please come down to the podium, let us know who you are, and we would welcome hearing from you. And I do ask folks to come down to the podium because we do televise our meetings, and they are rebroadcast and also available on YouTube. And if someone doesn't speak at the microphone, it's very difficult for those watching later to hear you, and we wouldn't want a single word of what you have to say to be lost. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Victoria Mashapino. I'm a resident of Downers Grove. I live at 5420 Grand Avenue. I've been a resident as of May 29th this year for 20 years. My kids we're in the Whittier School District. My kids went to Whittier, they went to Herrick. They've all graduated from Downers Grove North. All my children are away at college. Actually, I now have a college graduate. So I'm looking to downsize my house, and that is the reason and the purpose I'm here today. I'm having a difficult time downsizing because I can't sell my house. And the reason I can't sell my house is for 2 years now, it's been on the market, and I have, unfortunately, an eyesore of a neighbor that is not taking care of her property. The purpose for me being here tonight is I've gone to Robert Sandman for 2 years and asked him to please do something about it. I have the pictures of my neighbor's house where it has dilapidated trucks. It has tires all over the place, shanty shacks that are all over her yard. I cannot get the village to do anything about it, and I'm at wit's ends. And so I'm here today asking, I'm not blaming the village. I've been a happy resident of Downers Grove. I'm not a troublemaker. I'm not here to create trouble. I just want the code violations that have been in this neighbor's front yard for years and years and years. I've closed my eyes to it for 20 years. I can't now because I can't sell my house. And every potential buyer that comes into my house says, love your house, love your backyard, love everything about it. Who's the crazy neighbor? I can't move into something like that. This is my house, and this is what's next door to it. And I'll be happy to share all of these pictures, but I need to ask, what do I do now? Mr. Sandman, he's a nice guy, really nice guy, very sympathetic. Those dilapidated trucks still sit in the front of her yard. No tires, tarps over them. They're just a nesting place for possums and raccoons and skunks. It's just pathetic, and I need to ask someone, where do I go from here? Because I'm not getting any help or assistance from the code violations office.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming and sharing that with us. I'm sorry that the situation has reached this point. You're obviously
Very frustrated.
very frustrated.
Yes.
I can tell that and appreciate that. If you could please hand the pictures to the handsome young man to your left
Certainly.
there, Mr. Baker, and I believe you gave the address, so we know where this is. You're catching me at a disadvantage. Obviously, I don't have the history that you do, nor do my colleagues, but what we'll certainly do is find out what the history is on this property and see what the status is and if tickets have been issued and where they stand. I don't know the first thing about this situation. I
Right.
apologize. I try to keep up with all 49,000 residents of the village, but sometimes I can't.
I
keep up with
agree.
everybody.
I'm frustrated, and I wanted to
But
submit.
we'll find out where
Thank
things
you.
stand, and to the extent they might be, sometimes things get tied up in court, I just don't know.
Well, I know they did take her to court because she had boards with 3-inch nails surrounding her property, and she had to go to court on that, and the end result was she had to remove those. So she did remove those boards that had 3-inch nails surrounding her property, but she's only removed them to replace them with barbed wire around her property.
Somehow I now think I know who you're talking about. I feel like this is the sequel to the movie that I saw a couple weeks ago. But thank you.
Thank you for your time and
We'll see
attention.
where things stand, and we have your contact information. We can get back to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments of a general nature about things not on tonight's agenda? Good evening, welcome.
My name is Luke Wilgos, and I'm a resident of Woodridge, and I was wondering if I can have just a few moments to share something that is pertinent to Downers Grove.
Well, welcome to our community. Hopefully before you leave, you'll stop and buy something, because we can use the sales tax. And please give my best to Mayor Cunningham.
I sure
The
will.
answer is maybe. Quite frankly, it depends on what it is, because we do have a policy if it has to actually pertain to Downers Grove or a Downers Grove resident.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Well, it will, I guess I'll be the judge of that.
Okay.
But with that, with a fair warning, because we have on occasion had folks that have spoken about topics that really weren't appropriate for this municipal environment, and I hope you won't mind if I make that determination, I may ask you to wrap up.
I don't mind at all.
But since I don't know, I can't prejudge you, please go ahead.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I want to bring everyone's attention to something that happens every Saturday morning at 5:30 a.m. at Access Health Center, 1700 75th Street in Downers Grove. This is a health center that offers many, many different services to both men and women. Every Saturday morning at 5:30 in the morning, men with megaphones at the clinic waiting room window yell, "Murderer," and "You'll never live with yourself," and "You're going to hell." They literally stand at the clinic room waiting window and scream into the window. They stand with huge signs depicting graphic, bloody fetuses and murdered infants. As women drive up, these people disguise themselves as clinic workers by wearing vests, but their only goal is to turn the women away to go back home. They are literally taking advantage of women that they know are in a vulnerable position. This type of evil actually keeps me up at night. All along the sidewalk, as patients enter and exit the clinic, these people shout at them and hold signs extra high, calling them names, telling them they're going to hell and that they're never going to be able to live with themselves. While this is happening, I've noticed many women in tears. Can you imagine if someone that you cared about was met with this type of barbarism as they got into and out of their cars at a health clinic? Would you do nothing about it? Would it not make you feel any level of sympathy? Regardless of one's stance on abortion, regardless of one's religion, regardless of one's political ideology, we should all have the common sense and the empathy to know that intimidating and verbally abusing women while they are doing whatever it is they want to do at the health clinic is wrong. When people are harassed and tell us that they feel uncomfortable, we should believe them. I have witnessed that this clinic is vulnerable and has no one to stand up for them. The Downers Grove Police Department won't do any more than offer warnings consistently every week. It's insulting.
Well, sir, if I could just interrupt you, because I'm letting you go on because you were talking about the conduct of the individuals, and my question then comes back to whether you've lodged any complaints, or whether the clinic has made complaints, or whether patrons of the clinic have made complaints, because that's something within our authority to potentially address. And so I'm only questioning perhaps your standing to make those objections on behalf of the people who would be most directly affected.
The people at the clinic have called the police many times.
Well, I'm happy if there's an issue with respect to whether or not conduct has been inappropriate in violation of our municipal ordinances, following complaints made by their patrons or by the business owner. Then it's something, as with the last speaker, we can certainly look into and see where things stand. But I only mention that because I strongly suspect that there's more to the story than the police doing nothing if behavior is in violation of our ordinances.
I'm not quite done. If you just a little longer, I'm almost done, if that's all right. I appreciate that. Earlier today, you yourself, Mr. Mayor, said, among other things, that the police are meant to protect the weak from deception. That's not what I see happening every single morning on Saturdays here at the health clinic. The police are called, they engage with both sides every week, and as they're talking to us, just doing the right thing, being empathetic and saying, you know, you guys both have your own side to it, respect each other. And as they're doing that, there are men holding up signs just like this, with huge bloody signs, yelling at women, crying, entering the clinic in the presence of the police. Now, whether or not the police has a problem with that, we'll decide how that goes. But in my mind, when a police officer is standing there and allowing this to happen, it's not okay to do nothing. We need our elected officials to help these innocent people. We need you to do something. I don't know exactly what. But what we've been doing is nothing, and the results are crying women getting yelled at and giant bloody fetus signs. If I'm not mistaken, the chief of police is sitting in the room. And I just want to say, every week I talk to your officers and I tell them to help these people. Nothing is done. Your officers are not protecting the people of this community. I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm not saying that they don't have empathy. I'm not saying that they don't understand the situation. I'm just saying that when they arrive and this barbarism is occurring and people are screaming at women, they don't do anything. that's something that has to affect us. It has to hurt us in the heart. When someone else hurts, we're supposed to hurt. And when I see all of these people going into and out of the clinic, I hurt because I can see that they hurt. I just can't believe that a health clinic, needs volunteer escorts to walk people from their car to the clinic. What kind of world do we live in? It's a health clinic. That makes no sense to me. People should not be intimidating women when they're walking into this clinic, even if they think abortion is the most immoral thing that they could possibly imagine. That's not the point. The point is that they choose to congregate at a health facility, and when people exit their car, they start praying incredibly loudly, which is fine. Everyone has the right to pray. Everyone has freedom of speech. I'm absolutely for that. But doing it on the sidewalk to the entrance of a health clinic and calling women murderers and yelling at them, telling them, you'll never live with yourself, I can't sleep at night knowing that this happens. So I'm here just to tell you what's happening and that I want you guys to do something about it. Whether it's a call to the chief of police, whether it's just having a conversation with somebody, I'd be more than happy to be a part of any conversation. We're out there every single week trying to protect women. We're trying to divert attention away from the people holding up the signs. We try to engage with them so that they're not screaming at people. I can't do it any longer. I absolutely need you guys to do something about this.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I understand you feel very passionately about this, and you've pointed out the conduct you're concerned about. Again, we can check with the business owner, with patrons, and see what the reports have been, if complaints have been filed. I will note that it doesn't seem to me that nothing is being done, just not what you would like to be done, because people
There's nothing being done.
They're arriving and talking. You said it yourself. There are police officers showing up and they're talking with both sides. So it's not nothing. It's just not.
That
what you
doesn't
would like.
mean.
I understand it does
That
not
means
meet with your
nothing.
expectations.
They're
sir,
not
but
doing anything about it.
That's your
As they
concern.
talk to us and say, hey, guys, be peaceful. At the same time, there's women crying and being yelled at with a megaphone.
You've made your point.
Okay.
Thank you for
I
sharing with
appreciate
us.
you giving me the time. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Safe travels back to Woodridge.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Items of a general nature with respect to things not on tonight's agenda. All right, very good. Hearing none, we'll move to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to our active agenda. We have 4 items on our active agenda. Item 7. First one is item 7A. Do I have a motion to adopting an ordinance authorizing a special use for 7221 Lamont Road to permit an animal boarding facility?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council adopt an ordinance authorizing a special use for 7221 Lamont Road to permit an animal boarding facility with a number of conditions, including Condition 4, at no time shall more than 35 dogs be within the outdoor play area. Condition 5, at the discretion of the village manager, petitioner may be required to submit a report detailing compliance with Section 28.10.040B of the Downers Grove zoning ordinance, operational performance, the noise ordinance, including but not limited to the duration and decibel levels of the noise emitted from the property. Any violation of this section or the Downers Grove zoning ordinance shall be deemed grounds for revocation of the special use granted herein and shall be subject to the remedies and enforcement powers afforded the village in Section 28.13.020D of the Downers Grove zoning ordinance. The final condition, among others, the hours of operation of the outdoor play area shall be limited to 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily and shall be supervised by a trained employee at all times when in use. Otherwise, I move the motion as presented.
Second.
Thank you. So motion and a second. Questions or comments from members of the audience? Please, as usual, come down to the podium, tell us who you are, and welcome hearing from you. Good evening, welcome.
Hi, Marvin Shar, 909 Rob Roy Place in Downers Grove. I have a handout for you, just a second. I'll just wait a second until the handout comes out. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here this evening, and thank you for your service to us in the community. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of my wife and myself and other residents in the vicinity. We are asking the council to vote against this ordinance because the proposed special use provides for the establishment of an outdoor play area. There are four main issues I would like to discuss tonight. One concerns the special use criteria. One concerns recent special use requests. A third issue is surrounding communities. And the fourth is the revised plan that the petitioner provided on Thursday. The first issue is, does the petitioner's proposal satisfy the requirements for a special use as contained in the ordinance? Now, the zoning ordinance lays out three separate criteria to qualify for a special use, and I want to address the third criterion. The third criterion is that the proposed use will not be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing in the vicinity or injurious to their property values. In this case, the council has been provided clear evidence that this outdoor play area is detrimental to the welfare of the residents in the vicinity. You have a petition signed by 179 residents in the vicinity. You have numerous emails and public statements, and you have people here tonight as well. In evaluating this criterion, you do not just look to the welfare of the shopping center owner who is getting a new tenant. You look to the welfare of all the residents in the vicinity. And in fact, two of our residents near to the proposed location are special needs children. What I and the other residents are stating to you is this. This proposal is detrimental to our welfare and injurious to our property values. The third criterion for a special use is not met. The second issue that I would like to discuss is the petitioner's proposal significantly different from and more harmful than other dog boarding requests which were recently approved by the council? And the answer to that is yes. The two recent dog boarding special use requests considered by the council were the request at 941 63rd Street and the request at 421 Maple Avenue, one of the Doggy Depot buildings. The request at 63rd Street was for a veterinary facility. In that case, after much deliberation, the council approved the request. But in that case, unlike this one, the outdoor use was very limited, typically 5 to 7 or fewer dogs at a time, not 35 dogs. Further, the dogs would go outside not for play, but for potty breaks. The play area at 63rd Street is solely indoors. This case was very different from the present one. The second recent request was at 421 Maple Avenue, the facility to replace one of the Doggy Depot buildings. That case was very different as well. In that case, no residents objected to the proposal. Moreover, in that case, nearly all of Doggy Depot's activities will be conducted indoors, as the facility will use 4 indoor play areas and 1 small outdoor area. In its application, the petitioner has tried to say that it is just like these other cases. On Exhibit A of its petition, it says, and I quote, "Nearly all of Pete and Mac's activities will be conducted indoors." But unlike 63rd Street, which has only an indoor play area, and Doggy Depot, which has 4 indoor play areas and 1 small outside play area, Pete and Max are planning 2 play areas, 1 outside and a smaller one inside. The preponderance of activities will be outside, This is really important. You are being asked tonight not just to approve another animal boarding facility. You are being asked to approve a major expansion of outdoor activity and harm to the residents. Please vote no. The third issue I would like to discuss is, are there communities around Downers Grove concerned about potential issues with outdoor play areas and dog boarding facilities and taking steps to protect their residents from potential harm? The answer is yes. Surrounding communities are concerned about outdoor play areas. I mentioned last time, in Hinsdale, in March of 2017, there was a proposal for a special use for a dog boarding facility. The Hinsdale Board of Trustees expressed concern about an outdoor play area, and as a result, the applicant submitted a revised plan with the outdoor play area removed. In Westmont, animal boarding is not even allowed as a permitted special use. In Darien, there are strict rules governing outdoor play areas, and presently, the village of Darien has none of them. In rejecting this proposal tonight, the village would have good company among its neighboring communities in acting to protect its residents. The fourth issue I would like to discuss is the petitioner's revised plan, like its initial plan, significantly detrimental to the residents in the vicinity? The answer to this question is yes. I didn't really want to spend a lot of time discussing this revised plan because it changes so little from the original plan. This is not a game changer. What does it do? It increases the plastic fence size from 6 to 8 feet. And in the original version of the petitioner's plan, I believe they provided for an 8-foot fence. The second change is that there are 2 rows of baffles hung from the roof, not 1 row. And while it is not exactly clear how the baffles were to be deployed in the original plan, in this revised plan, there are 1.5 feet of airspace between the baffles in each row, and there are air spaces between the fence and the baffles and between the baffle rows. And it is not clear that the baffles are anchored against the wind. It is essentially the same plan. Now, if you look at the two at the attachment I've given you, one is a letter from Mr. Snyder, and the second one after that is a letter from Mr. Scarpy. We asked Mr. Snyder of Chicago Land Renovations to evaluate the revised plan. I have given you Mr. Snyder's letter. Mr. Snyder is a general contractor who specializes in soundproofing. What Mr. Snyder told us is that petitioner's revised plan would not be effective from a sound control perspective. He also said that the revised plan would not result in a significant improvement over the original plan. The reason is this: the fence and the baffles, which are the key to their plan, as deployed, are not effective means of controlling sound. As Mr. Snyder explains in his letter, air is the path for sound, and barriers must be airtight. Sound will travel through the 8-foot PVC fence virtually as though it were not there. Baffles are not to be used for this kind of sound control purpose. That's because they're used to prevent echo, not to reduce the amount of sound. The second attachment from Mr. Hunter Scarpy of Acoustical Solutions, of a sound firm in Richmond, Virginia. Again, Mr. Scarpy says that the petitioner's revised plan would not be effective in controlling the sound. We also discussed this plan with others, including a contractor who is engaged in building animal boarding facilities in Illinois. What we are hearing over and over and over again is this: to control the sound in an outdoor play area, you need a wall with a dense material, like concrete cinder block or 12-inch thick brick. And you need to attach sound absorption material to the wall, and you need an effective roof. That is not petitioner's revised plan. As you remember when I spoke to you 2 weeks ago, my last slide was a picture of handshaking. And that's what I hoped that I could do tonight, is shake hands. Unfortunately, that is not the case. If you look at my last attachment, I have a picture of the Doggy Depot invitation, in which prior to going to the Plan Commission, Doggy Depot reached out to the residents, told them about the plan, asked for their input, etc. None of that has occurred in this case. Pete and Max didn't reach out to us before they went to the Plan Commission. They have never reached out to us. That is very unfortunate. What we are asking you, the council, to do tonight is to do what Pete and Max failed to do, to listen to us, to represent us, and to vote no on this ordinance. Now, I have just a couple other comments I wanted to make. I wanted to comment briefly on one condition which is absent from the ordinance, and that is a limitation on the number of dogs which can be boarded at the facility. There is no limitation on that number in either the community development report or in this ordinance. The only limitation listed is the number of beds, 88. Will the petitioner be legally permitted to board 88 dogs, 176 dogs, 500 dogs? We simply don't know. Without such a limitation, this ordinance is deficient and should be voted down. In conclusion, I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of my neighbors, especially those on Old Main Street and Pinewood Court, who will be so deeply affected by this proposal. I wanted to close by reading a portion of a letter from one of those residents. My wife, son, and I recently moved into 7215 Main Street, right behind the proposed animal boarding facility. We are a young family new to the area. I am 31 and my wife is 30. I mention these details because my wife and I, who have no ties to Downers Grove, decided to settle in this community and grow our roots. We made the largest investment of our lives to be here. Hundreds of thousands of dollars may not be a lot to every person, but to us it certainly is. With this proposal, I can consider it sunk. This single proposal could hinder me financially like nothing else in my life. The value of my property, as well as others in the area, will diminish. This would crush us if when we decided to sell. Our quality of life will suffer as well. I beg you to reconsider this. This is coming from a dog lover and owner and from a family of many small business owners. I love to see people succeed, but this specific business being so close to a residential area will do more harm to us, the community, than good. That's how he ends his very nice letter. Mayor and Commissioners, I hope you take this and other messages to heart. I hope that in voting tonight you respect and give voice to the overwhelming opinion of the residents in the vicinity and vote no on this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Sharp.
I have one question.
Please, folks, I know you all remember from 2 weeks ago.
Mr. Shaw, I have one
Applause,
question.
otherwise I'm going to ask you to applaud when the petitioner speaks.
Question. Okay. Hopefully this should be a very simple question. Is it your view that if the neighbor hears any dog barking, regardless of how faint, at how low of a decibel level, that will cause the harm that you're describing?
If there were one dog outside, let me answer it this way. If this were the 63rd Street proposal with 5 to 7 dogs out for potty time in an area that's as enclosed as that is, we would be okay with that.
No, but my question, though, is if the decibel level of the barking were measured, is there a level low enough that the harms you described would not occur?
If you posit a case in which you have tiny decibels, I suppose that could be the case. But we're talking about 35 dogs, 8 to 6 every day. We're talking about an environment in which, with respect, The petitioner has experience, if you look at their facilities, they're all in industrial areas. I think in one of them, and we look deeply, it's surrounded only in one of the four is it's surrounded by houses. You could make a hypothetical up that you had only, tiny decibels, and therefore it wouldn't be a problem. But frankly, Commissioner White, I just don't think that's the real world here.
Well, the reason I bring this up is that the ordinance as drafted has a requirement that if the measured levels of decibels exceed the sound ordinance, that's grounds to revoke the special use.
I understand. Two comments on that. One, I think making us go through court enforcement, we don't have to deal with barbed wire like the First Lady, but it's a heavy, heavy burden on us. And the other thing is, we're not opposed to having that condition in there, but I don't think you can say what could happen after the special use is granted, that they behave badly. I don't think that's the basis for granting the special use. They have to meet the requirements of the special use before you can grant it. And therefore, while that condition is a condition that we don't disagree with, I don't think it answers that question, that key question, which is, are the criteria met?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Holman. I live at 834 72nd Street. I'm here to make comments on behalf of myself and my wife. We lived in Downers Grove for, our current house for 23 years and enjoyed every moment of it, in a very quiet neighborhood. And I kind of like to start by saying that we're not anti-people. We don't come out and complain about everything. And we're generally very supportive of business. But because not much has changed from 2 weeks ago, specifically in terms of the design of the proposed outdoor portion of this facility, we remain opposed to the granting of a special use permit for the animal boarding facility because we believe it will have an adverse impact on property values and the neighborhood in general, and thus does not meet the third criterion in the granting of a special use permit. We were a little bit excited to see that there was going to be a redesign, but then disappointed when we saw that the redesign did not change much, and our intuition was confirmed by the Chicago renovations report that you have in hand that details the design flaws of the proposed outdoor structure. You have that, so I won't go into it in any detail, but essentially this report says that the structure will be ineffective from a sound control perspective. And essentially, in this case, that means that it will not be able to contain dog barking noise. Thus, with the potential of significant nearby dog barks, this introduces a negative risk to our otherwise quiet neighborhood of potentially triggering nearby dogs to bark in turn, producing a neighborhood chain reaction of barking dogs. For a moment, I'd like to spend just a little bit of time to talk about the noise ordinance that's referenced within the draft ordinance itself. And specifically, that is 10.040B2, which details a ladder of noise levels and timeframes of which I'm sure you are aware. Although it was expressed by the council 2 weeks ago that there's a strong preference to have an objective benchmark, I contend objectiveness of the thresholds themselves introduce a subjective judgment of whether a noise is materially negative because different noises will impact an area differently. So, do the businesses in the area now make some noise? Yes, occasionally. If you stand by NTB, you might hear an occasional small amount of whoosh from the air of a car coming down the lift, or even brief impact wrench noise, but it's very brief and it doesn't cause other dogs to bark in the area. Importantly, if they don't bark and it's brief, it's non-intrusive to us as well. Those particular businesses, in particular NTB, has a door on the back which is closed normally for about 6 months of the year when it is cold. If it is open, there's a remedy here where residents could ask that that door be closed. There is no such potential remedy with regard to the animal boarding facility because by its nature, the activity would be outside. And so it's because of this that even if the dogs weren't producing a sound above that ordinance threshold, say 80 decibels for a minute and a half, that we believe nonetheless it will have a very significant negative impact on our neighborhood. So to close, to us, there are critical uncertainties regarding this proposal that have only downside and no upside benefit for the neighborhood. There's near certainty about the design not effectively containing sound, and we can speculate as to what the amount and frequency of dog barking and triggering behavior will be. It seems the only certainty is overwhelming neighborhood opposition. And in that regard, I ask that you recognize that input which you have received through the petition, emails, and people that have come to these meetings to provide their input as the will of the people, that as mayor and commissioners, my wife and I request that you follow by voting no tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. Appreciate your comments. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Heller. I'm a resident in 1025 Claremont. That's the Townhome Association that's right across the street, Main Street, from this proposed kennel. And I just came to represent our association. I'm a member of the board there. And we were unanimous in our objection to the special use permit being granted, and we ask that you vote no. It's a 64-unit townhome association, primarily young families and retirees. We are subject to a fair amount of noise from Main Street itself, not to mention air traffic overhead. And this would be one more of those annoyances going 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Probably Sunday mornings are the one day during the week when we get a little rest from the noise down there. So I just wanted you to know that we are unanimous in our objection to this, so it's not just the neighbors on the other side of Main Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Hi, my name's Nola Armento, and I've been a realtor full-time for over 40 years. And I live in Downers Grove at 4911 Bryan Place. I have a lot of friends and clients in the area that we're talking about. And being a realtor for so many years, there aren't too many kennels and boarding places with that many dogs that don't back up to either railroads or warehouses or, as the one speaker suggested, the new doggy depot going in the old piano building, which is an excellent location. As far as values, it's hard to say, but I know when I show a house, and even if a neighbor's backyard has a barking dog in it, the people are very concerned. They say, never mind, I don't care what the house looks like. Several years ago, there was a house for sale on Dawn Place backing up to the Downers Grove Animal Hospital on Ogden Avenue. Pulled into it backed up right to where the dogs were barking. People didn't even want to go into the house. So I know it'll affect the amount of showings and the amount of people that might otherwise be interested in that neighborhood. That's my only comment.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Hi, my name is Kathy Nicola, and I live at 613 72nd Court in Downers Grove. I'm probably living outside of the noise range issue, but my concerns are with regard to hygiene and matters of what insurance companies commonly call attractive nuisance. This facility is going to be immediately next door to a grocery store. And I shop there frequently, the Shop and Save store. My observations in other animal facilities nearby, the Petco, the PetSmart, have grooming facilities, and one of them, I can't remember which one, has daytime, playtime activities and so on. I've observed that even though there are spaces made available on the parking lot for people to toilet their dogs as they come and go from the facility, animals don't always make it to the spot they're supposed to go to. People don't always clean up after their animals. You're talking about a situation where is high foot traffic going in and out of the grocery store. So if you're going to have people going in and out with dogs out of the daycare or the boarding, and you've also got a lot of foot traffic going in and out of the grocery store, you're going to have distracted dogs, you're going to have quite possibly kids that are going to be attracted to the dogs. I mean, I've observed things like this happening in front of both of the pet stores, where they're not immediately adjacent to food facilities, and they're also not immediately adjacent to other businesses that have high levels of foot traffic. I just think that this is something that that also deserves to be seriously taken into consideration when looking at this issue. I don't think that close a proximity to a food establishment is an appropriate place to put any kind of an animal facility. Simply, as I said, from a nuisance standpoint, from attractive nuisance standpoint, and from hygiene standpoint. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nicola. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Susan Lesniak, and my husband Emil and I have lived at 912 Applegate for over 25 years. I'm not a fan of public speaking. I get nervous and really am not comfortable doing it. Today's my third time speaking. I'm sorry about that. I'm pushing past my fears because I feel that strongly against this doggy daycare. Here are my reasons. I have reviewed the petitioner's revised plans, and I'm deeply disappointed with it and still have three major concerns: noise and harm, noise and harm, noise and harm. Building the fence an extra 2 feet higher will not stop the barking and howling of 35 dogs. Noise travels, and this simply will not be enough. The only 100% solution to eliminating the barking and howling noise is to completely reject the outdoor kennel. The kennel will also cause harm to nearby homeowners due to the potential drop in property values. I mean, seriously, who would ever want to buy a home next to an outside dog kennel that allows 35 barking and howling dogs, the majority of the day outside? It will also cause harm due to the increased stress we will all experience from listening to the noise of barking and howling dogs, which, by the way, are not even our own pets. It will cause harm due to the wasted time put on our police when they will be called because of the noise. Please make no mistake here, these two problems, noise and harm, really do go hand in hand. Please put yourselves in our positions. The only solution to this is to totally deny the outdoor play area. It appears most neighbors are not against the indoor facility. Personally, I'm not a fan of treating animals better than humans, so truth be told, I'm having a hard time getting my head around the entire concept. Massages for dogs, suites for dogs. I'm sure financially it's a very profitable business. My opinion is that we have taken the man's best friend concept way too far. We received an email from I believe it was one of the council members, saying many of the neighbors complained and were against the women's shelter. Frankly, to even compare the two is extremely disturbing to me. The women's shelter provides a safe haven for emotionally and physically abused women and children. The doggy day spa should not even be put into the same category. We live in a world where we rescue animals. That seems to be the new buzzword. The women's shelter rescues abused women and children. There is absolutely no comparison, at least not in my mind. Frankly speaking, if a few poodles or collies have to go a day without a massage, I honestly could live with that. If these pets go a day without being allowed to run outside, mind you, in a cage with AstroTurf and sound baffling, which also is next to the NTB where they use high-pitched pneumatic drills, that seems very kind to the animals. These poor dogs will also be in an outdoor play area which is behind the Shop and Save grocery store, where these animals will be exposed to harmful diesel fumes emanating from food delivery trucks. That totally seems to contradict the high-quality services that Pete and Mac is trying to promote. If all of my fellow neighbors and friends have to listen to 35 barking and howling dogs, we would not be able to live with that. Neighbors have all come together to attend these meetings. Many of us have given up personal commitments. My husband's missing his hockey game right now. To listen and speak at each of these meetings. We have put out signs and posters on our lawns, something I have never seen as long as we have lived on Applegate. The noise and the harm it would bring to our quiet neighborhood will be devastating. I respectfully ask that you please vote to deny this. If I was a dog owner considering boarding my pet at Pete and Mac's, I would really have serious doubts with this. Also, after listening to code violations and hearing about Mr. Sandman, I don't know him personally. We have called him one time. It just seems like the code violations, you know, you have the problem and then it just continues. So, like I said, I ask that you deny this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lesniak. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Please, welcome.
Bill Stasinski, Studio 21 Architects in Downers Grove. I'm also a longtime resident in Downers Grove. I had one concern that one document might not have gotten to the council. We submitted last Thursday, I believe it was, and passed that just to, and if it has been presented and you were aware of seeing this, great. But it talks about diminished noise levels over distance, and you know, and some of these noise levels were based on the readings that were obtained in Avondale, Arizona, with the acoustic information that was given from the Pete and Mac's down in Avondale. So they had some recorded noise levels, and the distance 8 feet from the outdoor area gave an estimated decibel level of 64.8, and at the very highest recorded amount, 77.10. But if you look at the chart, and this is based on a formula based on sound levels dissipating over distance, you'll see how the sound levels come down to like at 200 feet, 36.84 decibel levels, and 49 at the most extreme recorded sound. So I took a cell phone ambient, now it's not a scientific study, I'm not a sound engineer, but I took from my cell phone the ambient sound level on the north property line of the proposed Pete and Mac's locations. And at the site, the average ambient sound was ranging from 60 to 65 decibels and highs of about 70 to 80. This was at the north property line. The distance to the closest residential property on the north side is approximately 335 feet from the outdoor play area. And if you look at this chart with the distance and the sound level going down, it would be roughly at 31.98, which is well under the ambient sound temperature, or ambient sound reading that I had at the site, again, with my cell phone. I also did one on the east property line, and that averaged about 50 decibels with highs of 55 to 60. And the closest property line to the east is approximately 380 feet from the outdoor play area. So in conclusion, once you get about 50 to 100 feet away from the play area, you're pretty much, you know, the noise created from the outdoor play area would pretty much be lower than what the ambient sound levels are in that area, given Lamont Road and that area. Just one other clarification, what was submitted last Thursday regarding the drawings was not intended to be a redesign of the facility. We were asked by Stan to give a little more clarification as to how the sound barriers were intended to be put up. And they were always intended to be offset, and that wasn't really clear in our earlier drawing. So that's the reasoning for that. It was asked if we could raise the fence to 8 foot, which we did in that case as well. The other thing is in closing, so if you have any questions about it, certainly I'd be interested in hearing it. But also, we initially were planning to reach out to the neighborhood, and it was mentioned that it probably wasn't necessary in this case by the people at the planning department. So we did not do that. However, and I don't know if Marvin recalls this, but I reached out to him after the planning commission meeting and said, I would like you to invite you to the office, we could discuss this. And he actually set up an appointment with me to meet me on, I believe it was a Wednesday afternoon. Marvin didn't show up. He didn't call me, he didn't contact me, he did not show up for that meeting. So he said that we didn't reach out to them at all. We'd had no desire to reach out to them, and yet we absolutely did, and I was not the one that canceled the meeting. So at that, if you have any questions, fine. Otherwise, I just wanted to bring this to the attention because it kind of came to my attention that this might not have been provided in the packet that you got.
Thank you, Mr. Szynski, for sharing that. Mr. Sharp, before you speak, actually, it's not a response back and forth. A lot of accusations have been made here tonight, and we don't respond to every one of them. But I'm going to ask if anyone... Sir, I would disagree with that. I think a lot of characters have been impugned. In fact, I've received some pretty nasty emails on this issue from some folks, and I think everyone's gotten a little too worked up about this.
I'm not worked up about anything other than...
Sir, please. All I want to say is if anyone who hasn't already spoken would like to speak, please come up first before we go into second round. And seriously, folks, this is not a back and forth. This is not a debate. This is not a courtroom. We're hearing your comments. We're going to ask some questions, and the council gets to share their views and ask any other questions. But let's not make accusations back and forth about one another. There's been already too much of that, in my opinion. Ma'am? Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Good evening, council. My name's John McIntosh, at 7233 Lyman Avenue. Been there for about 28 years. Really wasn't going to plan on speaking tonight, but in response to the last gentleman who was talking about the decibels and how far the travel and all that, I'm not really familiar with it, but there is a kennel in a residential area on Dunham, I believe, and
on Bel Air.
Yeah, and it's, I'm a gardener over at Marduk Farm, and I hear the dogs barking all day long. From my house on Lyman Avenue, which is very close to NTB in that area with the Walgreens, it's much closer to that than it is to that kennel that's over there. And I don't think there's any baffling or anything going on there, but I'm not too sure what the baffling will solve, if it's good or bad or whatever. But all I know is that I hear dogs barking all day long. And it's, I'm a dog, my wife and I, Sharon, have had dogs. We're dog lovers. I'm all for small business. It's great. But in that area, when anybody, and I'm sure that you folks could agree, if you hear a dog barking, okay, that's fine. You hear a dog barking for a length of time, it gets on your nerves. Our dog, we did our best to keep our dogs from barking because it is a nuisance to our neighbors. And dog barking, dogs bark. But an occasional bark, the same dog barks every morning at 5:30 and wakes you up, it starts your day off wrong. It's not good. So I would urge you to vote no. Like I said, I'm all for dogs, but not in this circumstance and where that's located in this residential area. It's just based on the one that I just cited, it does not work. And I'm sure if you talk to those people that live anywhere much farther than 300 feet, you're going to see that there is a problem there with the noise. So, thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else in the audience who hasn't already spoken would like to make a comment? Good evening. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. My name is Jim Schloss. I live at 814 Old Orchard Avenue. I want to start out by thanking you for listening to all of the comments. When I went to school during the Lincoln administration, Mrs. Etlett said that this would be important, and it is important. I echo most of the comments that have been here this evening. You know, when we moved into Downers a very long time ago, it was a nice, quiet community, and still is, thanks in great part to your efforts. And again, I sincerely appreciate that. But I will tell you that we have been assaulted by noise as things have changed. That situation right now with the airplane noise is noticeable and a quality of life issue. Noise is a quality of life issue. And I understand that things change. Community has grown. We had lots and snakes next to us. We don't anymore. So I get that. But the fact is we are being assaulted by noise. And this is one other assault. I do have a question. How will a violation be documented? Is that an appropriate question for me to ask of you?
At the request of the village manager, a sound analysis can be conducted, which will result in a report that will document what the sound is at the specified location.
And in my mind, therein lies the problem. These events will not occur in a predictable manner. And so we will be affected when they occur, but it's very difficult, in fact impossible for us to document that at the time unless somebody does that continually. And, you know, as the woman described earlier, the first speaker this evening, it's difficult to get attention. After the genie is out of the bottle, it's very difficult to change things. I understand it. Resources have been spent. I get it. But my point is that it is a very, very difficult thing to document. You know, there is a solution that I think I would accept, and from what I've heard, most people would accept, and that is an indoor play area that would solve this whole situation. The business could go into business, and I think most of the neighbors would be satisfied to the level that they would accept this, although I can't speak for everybody. So I urge you to reject this special use permit in that there is a solution which has not been introduced as part of the resolution. I'm trying, help me with the language.
You're right, that motion has not been made.
Thank you very much for your attention. I do appreciate it. And again, sincerely, I appreciate your commitment to the community.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your comments. Other questions or comments from anyone who has not yet spoken who would like to? Good evening, welcome.
Richard Weglars. I live at 1036 73rd Street. I'm a disabled veteran. And
thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you. There's a lot of ambulance and fire engine noise in our neighborhood because, as you're probably aware, the fire department's on 75th and Manning Road. And when they get to 75th and Lamont Road, you can barely hear yourself think. The neighborhood dogs kind of got used to it already, so they don't scream and howl for hours. But I can imagine some dogs that are not from the area hearing this noise could blow your mind. So I would highly suggest, you know, there are probably areas in Downers Grove, and I'm not sure, that have this permitted use, because there's many vacant buildings in Downers Grove, as I'm sure you're aware. And I think the people should look at a building like that instead of ramming through a special use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Other questions or comments from someone who has not yet spoken? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments, regardless of whether you have spoken before? Please, welcome back.
I will be brief. I will be brief. In 45 years of the practice of accounting and law, I have never, ever had an experience like this one, where someone in a public forum would accuse me of reaching out to them and canceling a meeting or no showing for a meeting. That just simply isn't the case. I reached out to him. It was innocent, actually. I reached out to him. He got back to me and said Wednesday, and I said what time, and I never heard from him again. So let's move on. The fine comments and sentiments with regard to the important issues here, which is what do we do in terms of getting us where we need to be, and I stand by those comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your patience. Other questions or comments from members of the audience?
I just wanted to reiterate a point made earlier, perhaps in a different fashion. Again, I question the application of the decibel standard as it applies here. Pneumatic drills do not set off a chain reaction of pneumatic drills in the neighborhood. Barking dogs will. And I think that's the unique situation we face here. It's just a very unique kind of a circumstance. And to talk about the sound studies, they simply, if dog barking were taking place in a vacuum, then that would apply. But I don't know what's going to happen with the neighborhood. Anyhow, just for the.
Understand your point. Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? All right, well, thank you for everyone for coming back and for sharing your comments and concerns and other input with us. I am now going to open it up for questions or comments from the members of the Village Council. Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Earl.
I can go first. I don't have any questions, but I do have some comments. And I did, as the neighbors had suggested, and this is always a good policy, if you're stuck on something, to go back and walk the neighborhood, which is what we always would suggest when we're zoning board of appeals or plan commission. Go and walk around the neighborhood, go to the site, see the site for yourself. And just from my experience, any business that goes into this old Walgreens space is going to make more noise than the empty space that's there now. The question for me is, what is
Excuse me, folks. Please, everyone up here was very patient, listened very carefully to everything that you had to say without making any comments. I would appreciate the same respect for us. Thank you. Commissioner Earl is speaking. She has the floor, just like everyone did when they were at the podium, speaking for in excess of an hour. Please. Oh, thank you. That is actually a legitimate point. Commissioner Earl,
I can speak into the microphone. Yes, that is a legitimate. I will start at the beginning. Any business that goes into this old Walgreens space is going to make more noise than the empty space that is there now. That is unquestionable. The question for me is what an acceptable noise level is for the neighborhood. Constant barking by a multitude of dogs is not acceptable to anyone. I have visited this location several times over the last few weeks, but I have also been a shopper in this mall for 30 years. This mall has never been silent or even quiet in my observations, thanks in part to several car repair places that do work with their doors open. I've often wondered to myself how the people could live so close to that noise. Well, I got my answer when I walked around over near the houses recently. It is quiet, on or near the sidewalk on Old Main Street. It is much quieter. So you have to ask yourself why that might be. There's a great distance from the mall to the sidewalk. Yet this type of facility, proposed dog facility, is not something new in Downers Grove. We have several others in this town. In your own neighborhood, there's a nearby dog kennel facility that is been around for well over 30 years. The kennel facility was started there before there were many residents in the town in that area, and admittedly, I've personally witnessed that at times it has been less than an ideal neighbor. But it also operates under none of the special regulations that we are attaching to this proposal, and more importantly, it operates on an old-style business model, which is what kennels used to be, and that's not what's being proposed here. We have another newer facility in town that's been here for about 12 years on Ogden. It is permitted by right. They work under the more modern ideals for dog boarding facilities, and their outdoor play area directly adjoins a residential backyard, and they have none of the special conditions we are attaching to this proposal. Yet we have received no noise complaints about this facility. In fact, the only issues we had was they and the neighbors both flood. That's the only problem they have. There is a third facility, also a more modern facility that's been in operation for probably about 7 years. It's within several blocks of two of the commissioners who are sitting up here right now. One of them didn't even know the facility existed so close to their home. Also, there have been no noise complaints from this facility. It also doesn't have any of these proposed sound controls. None of these three facilities has anything near the sound minimizing that is being proposed by this petitioner. As a dog owner and lover myself, living in a neighborhood full of dog lovers, the main key to keeping dogs quiet is to having them attended. A dog is going to bark like crazy if no one is there to stop it. And I have specifically requested that this approval requires the outdoor dogs to be attended at all times. There are also very specific hours in which the dogs can be out. The business people who are proposing operating this are proposing a new business model. The exact type being proposed here, business who are operating on the newer proposed business models, exactly the type that are being proposed here, are operating with no neighbor noise complaints. I think the conditions attached to the special use acknowledge that the neighborhood has concerns and specifically addresses them. There are things that are over and above the requirements placed on, these are things over and above similar businesses that have no requirements in place in this town. This proposed facility abuts no residential property lines. This proposed facility has hours that the outdoor play area can be used, and this proposed facility has provided a sound minimizing plan to dampen any excessive sound and will also not be leaving the dogs outside unattended. I think all of these, maybe one at a time, would not be enough to deaden any possibility of noise. Is it possible you might hear a dog bark once, maybe twice? Yes, but a whole group of dogs for an extended period of time, especially for hours on end, I don't see that happening. I see it's very unlikely if someone is out there with them, specifically to corral them, to shush them, to keep them engaged, and that is what we are seeing at the other facilities in town, including the Doggy Depot, which has been operating down the block from where it's at with nothing but a chain link fence and some fiberglass slats through it for 7 or 8 years. It literally is in the neighborhood now, and it's not having any complaints. Just the fact that it's moving 2 doors or 2 or 3 blocks to Maple, it doesn't change a whole lot for them. They've already got an established clientele, and they do use their outdoor play area. So my experience has been that it's the unattended ones that are by and large the problem, and I believe we've addressed that in our conditions. So thank you, and thank you all for coming, and thank you for all of the emails. I did read them.
Thank you, Commissioner Earl. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. Major issue here is noise, not sound. Sound, by definition, are vibrations that travel through the air or other medium and can be heard when they reach a person's or animal's ear. Noise is different. And when I looked it up, noise in French is an uproar, a disturbance, an outcry, a brawl. In modern French and pardon my French, chercher noise, which means to pick a quarrel, derived from the Latin word nausea, which means disgust, annoyance, discomfort. Literally, it comes from seasickness. Sound is measured in decibels. There's nothing to measure noise. Is 67 too high? Is 64 acceptable? Is 70 too high? For what? One baby in a church can ruin a sermon or a flight from one city to another. Dogs barking can be annoying. Why? Machines are understandable. An air wrench, a train, we understand those things. Babies and dogs barking leave us to ask in our minds when we hear it, why is the baby crying? Why are the dogs barking? When and how will they stop? 35 dogs? Geez. After 3 or 4, does it matter? What a ridiculous number. What a limit. We have 2 dogs, Spud and Potato. Over the years, they've warned us about the dangers of mailmen, UPS, FedEx people. They tell us about the school bus in the morning and the afternoon. We don't need a doorbell. They both bark. It's never just one. There's a 1-to-1 ratio of people to dogs in our house. It doesn't work. Gentlemen, mention that. I need to tell people I live near a kennel. I really don't live near a kennel. It's quite a distance away, several blocks away, and we can clearly hear the dogs barking. I'm sure it's less than 35. You don't add a boarding facility because there's an NTV there. Noise is cumulative. That is a reason why you don't want to add noise to the neighborhood. As an aside, if NTV noise is acceptable because it's loud in short spurts, then by that logic, the shopping center could be a candidate for a gun range. Now really, what does that say about our definitions and our code is sensible? I talk to people who don't live in the neighborhood, and they say they don't have a dog in the, they don't have a dog in the hunt, but they ask, why would you put a kennel next to a grocery store? The walls can be thicker than what's in Fort Knox, but no wall is thick enough to change perception. We have a sales tax producing business that can adversely be affected to a great or a less extent. When we need sales tax, why would we do that? There is no upside here. You heard the question, how many complaints have we received of such a facility or such an area? And the answer is none. Sure, people call, but there could be dozens of calls, but no complaints. I've complained 3 times about the shopping center in the back of my house. 3 times. And I will donate $100 to a rescue dog center if staff can produce any of my complaints. That noise even traveled from my shopping center to across the street to your shopping center, and I still heard it. Allowing the outdoor facility and then writing up a process looks good on paper, but it's never going to happen. Mr. Fieldman isn't going to wake up on a Thursday and ask for a test. The residents are going to have to complain and fill out paper constantly, and the facility will be approached to fix it multiple times, and each time you'll have to start over. If a test is ever requested, the facility will shop for a friendly firm. You can be assured that any guests, for example, like Spud and Potato, they'll be confined to quarters during the period of the test. If they fail, then it may go to council that has never taken away a special use and already has failed the neighborhood. If the council does remove the special use, the village is likely to wind up in court. And no verbiage will prevent seeking a court's opinion. Several years ago, the village spent thousands of dollars and many hours conducting TCD, Total Community Development 3. The major finding of that TCD was that the village should encourage formation of neighborhood groups and improve relations. Here we clearly have a neighborhood that is quickly organized and are serious about what they don't want in their neighborhood. And I hope, no matter what happens after this vote, I hope you will remain neighbors and get together and participate in the process. As elected officials, are we going to tell them that we know better? Why have neighborhood groups if they aren't going to matter? Is having an outdoor facility that advantageous to the village? Are we willing to give up some sales tax? Is the petitioner or landlord going to live with any of this noise? Advantage to the village is minimal and could be detrimental. Are we going to be representatives, or are we going to be the experts in decibels and process creation? So looking at the ordinance, Mr. Shar went through some of those, that the proposed use is expressly authorized as a special use in the district in which it is to be located. It is. Special use is another layer of protection for users that might other occur by right. It's for protection. The second, that the proposed use at the proposed location is necessary or desirable to provide a service or facility that is in the interest of the public convenience and will contribute to the general welfare of the neighborhood or community. The community doesn't need this facility, and the neighborhood finds it undesirable. I'd say more than undesirable. And it's injurious to the general welfare. Number three, that the proposed use will not, in the particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of the persons residing or working in the vicinity, or be injurious to property values or improvements in the vicinity. This use with an outdoor facility will be detrimental at the very least to the general welfare of the persons in the vicinity and could negatively affect property values. They certainly will not improve things. As an elected representative of the people, I find that this petition fails the special use requirements, and I will not be supporting it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Please.
No, please. I love applause, but not here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, I did not hear any applause for Commissioner Earl's comments. Do you see why we can't have that? It's just not fair, it's not respectful, and folks, you're all neighbors. If you could please show the decorum in here that we ask of you and the mutual respect, I would greatly appreciate it. We had a matter here not too long ago where there were double the people in this chamber, all from the Oak Trace facility. I dare say without discriminating that most of them were older than the folks here, and they were bitterly divided on a topic. It was the most respectful display of civility I'd ever seen. There were no accusations, there was no clapping, there was no applauding, there was no jeering. We all commented 201 about how well they conduct themselves, and I would like to hold that up as a standard for this community because our elders really schooled us on how to conduct ourselves in a public meeting that day. And so I would ask that you please, I've now asked more than once, no applause or comments when other people are speaking, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. Unless you're going to applaud for every speaker, which I highly doubt. And I would actually ask you to refrain from doing that. Can we all agree on that, please? Thank you. Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor. I promise to be brief and to the point as usual. As a dog owner myself, I completely understand the benefits and the draw to having a facility that gives animals outdoor time. There's always so much information for us to consider here on the dais, typically much more than the public realizes. In this situation, after truly considering all available information, I think we have the opportunity to really hear our residents and the resounding concern regarding noise. I understand these concerns and I empathize with them. I personally think Pete and Max would be a great addition to Downers Grove. I'm just wondering if maybe not at this location. I could also fully support this business in this location without an outdoor area, but I know that that is not their business model, and I completely understand that. Tonight, I think we have the opportunity to stand with our residents, and that is what I intend to do.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I first want to thank everybody who came out tonight, came out to the prior hearing on this, the Plan Commission, sent an email, phone call. There really, truly has been just an enormous amount of feedback on this. I think given the amount of feedback, we might want to think about whether the time has come to change, thank you. We might want to consider whether the time has come to change the zoning regulations such that this particular use is not allowed in a commercial zone property such as is being proposed tonight. But that is for another day. We have to deal with the proposal that we have in the location that we have. As has been covered previously, this proposed facility is not contiguous to residential property as prior approved facilities were. It's farther from residential areas than those other approved facilities. We have other conditions that will limit the ability of the special use petitioner to have noise emanating from the property, and I like the limitation on when the proposed outdoor area can be used, and that was one that I requested, and I fully support all of the other conditions on this. The bottom line is that the petitioner here has every incentive to comply, because the entire risk of non-compliance falls on them. Because the fact of the matter is, if they fail to comply, they end up right back here, and I don't think that's a place they'd like to be. A lot of comments have been made about the doggy depot. I'm one of the commissioners that lives not too far from it, and as the crow flies from the new facility, my backyard is probably 550 to 650 feet, somewhere in that ballpark. And I'm one of those residents that didn't object to it when it was proposed, and I was part of the unanimous vote in favor of it when it was brought to this council. I think we have to give the opportunity here to demonstrate whether or not compliance can be had. I believe it can, with the conditions that are proposed here. If it can't, I think they know what the ramifications are. I'll be supporting this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. This use is one that, sorry, that's a common problem of mine, I apologize. This use is one that is, shows up in our ordinance because we all put it there. I think we anticipated maybe not this exact site, but certainly the idea that this kind of a use would be done in less traditional areas. But the special use process allows us to put restrictions on there. Each of us has talked both last week and this week a little bit about those special restrictions and the opportunity that those have to address concerns where these uses might border on some of those criteria, whether they really do affect the health, safety, and welfare, or whether they really are injurious to property values. You got to realize that's all speculative stuff. It really is. It's very hard to quantify that. And by putting the use in our ordinance, we've said as a community, as a council, as a community, that we want those uses there. The issue I have with this particular situation is that I don't see a good path to remedying should this become a problem. We have, another section of ordinance that I had hoped might somehow find its way into our special use permit, and it doesn't. There's no good way to do that. I'll be the first to admit that there's no good way to do that. But we talk specifically elsewhere in our ordinance, village ordinances, about the nuisance of dog noise and about dogs not being allowed to bark, and how that is something that we as a community have said for decades we don't want to permit. And we have a method of dealing with those, assigning tickets to those. Seldom is that ever done. But the point is that as a community, we've said for years that we believe that is a nuisance. My concern with this situation is the remedies, I don't see remedies for a nuisance situation. In fact, we don't identify that. We identify DBA. And, DBA, sorry, doing business as. We identify decibels. But I don't think that's the right measure. What I'm hearing and what I think is a reasonable concern is what I've said to some of my colleagues, is frequency of frequency. A dog bark is a unique noise. There's no question about that. It is not traffic. Just because you live near an expressway doesn't mean you should have to endure dog barking. I don't see any vehicle that we've got at our disposal to measure the frequency of frequency and the annoyance or lack thereof. And if we did, how we would deal with that. Simply calling the police or calling code enforcement every time you're annoyed by a dog barking is kind of a disaster. And I think that before we do this, I think we need to figure out some method by which we're going to address the nuisance aspect, which is what's really, I think, in play. I don't think anybody questions whether it can be there as a special use. I don't think anybody questions whether dogs barking is annoying. I've got a dog, when it barks, it annoys me. I go out and get it. The question is, how much should somebody have to endure? And what we don't address in this special use permit is how much somebody should endure, or what we as a village are going to do about it if they are enduring it. And I like I said, I don't have the answer for that tonight, but it, to me, is the material issue. I don't think measuring decibels at the property line is the issue at all. So I don't see the baffles, and I don't see the opportunity for the manager to cause for there to be a sound study as remedies for what the potential problem for our residents is. And that disconnect gives me pause. It makes me think that we can still do more, and we can still do better and come up with a solution. I want to say, nobody is entitled to no change. I mean, it's important. I mean, I hope you hear that everybody up here is listening and sympathetic, but you're not entitled to no change. When I live in my house, I'm not entitled to no change of my environment. What we do when we sit up here is try and figure out how to manage those changes, and simply weighing number of votes. You know, I got 55 emails one way and one email the other way is not the way you weigh those competing interests and manage the community. People will have to endure change. They will see change. The question is how much change, and what are we going to do about it if it violates health, safety, and welfare, if it is injurious to property values. I don't think it will be. I kind of really question that, to be honest with you. But what I don't see in our special use permit is a method by which we could address and remedy a situation. And so I'm reluctant to go forward tonight. That's kind of a non-answer to the question. I recognize that. And Mayor, you're probably ready to kill me because you'd like a little more material answer. But I think that,
all I have to do is call the roll, material answer.
That's, I guess what I'm saying is, when I come with a problem like that, I should also come with a solution, or a recommended one, and I don't have one, I admit that. But that, I think, for me, that's the issue. The issue is that I think frequency of frequency could, in fact, be a problem that is injurious to the neighbors, and I'm not sure how we, with our special use and the restrictions we've put on, have made any real attempt at managing that. I think we've made the only attempt we can make within our existing ordinance, but I don't think it's enough.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner White?
Well, I don't have a written prepared statement. I'm more interested in having a discussion about this. First, I have a question for staff to answer one of the issues that was brought up. Do 88 beds equal 88 dogs?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. So my question then would be, I guess maybe put the petitioner on the spot, would they have an objection in adding a limit of 88 dogs as a condition of the special use? If you have 88 beds, or does your business model need more than one dog per bed?
I'm sorry, what now? Would we be willing to say we limit the amount of boarding dogs to 88?
Because you have 88 beds, apparently.
We have 88 rooms, yes. But there are times when a family of dogs will share a room, so there could be two. Now, again, boarding is cyclical. There's not always going to be 88 dogs. Holidays are busy, sometimes in the summer we're busy. But our normal occupancy probably is 50% and lower.
Is there an upper limit?
Matt, please don't interrupt. Just for the benefit of those watching at home, could you please let us know who you are?
I'm sorry,
yes.
Gabe Barwald with Pete and Max Pet Resorts.
Thank you.
If I were to propose an amendment with an upper limit on dogs, is 88 enough, 100, 90?
Well, I would say if we are busy and full at Christmas, there will be 100. Just because, again, that's not to say they will all be outside.
And it's
Not
also-
all dogs go to daycare outside.
Right. And that would be a holiday period where there's excessive number, where many people are on vacation.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'll consider before we vote, making a motion to amend the petition to put an upper limit on the number of dogs. I haven't done that yet. My next question or comment, the idea to provoke discussion rather than a reading of statements followed by a vote, would be, I'd ask Commissioner Barnett and also staff to look at this. This occurred to me this evening. If I thought of this earlier, I would have. 15.5.1B, it's a code violation. No person shall keep within the village any dog or other animal which makes any unreasonable barking, howling, or other noises which disturbs the peace. I believe that that's actually, that's quasi-criminal offense currently under the statute. Just throw it up, maybe this is totally unprepared, but is there any reason why that couldn't be added as a condition of the special use, that upon conviction in the circuit court of violating that ordinance, that would be cause to the village council to consider whether to revoke the special use? In other words, they could come and explain what they fixed, but upon conviction in the circuit court of that ordinance violation, is there a reason we couldn't do that?
Yeah, staff has no objection to that, but procedurally, the other noise issues of bringing result of a sound study would come before this council first, before we would ever be in front of a DuPage County Circuit Court.
Okay, because what I'm trying to get at, and again, I'm trying to work for a discussion here, is I certainly would want to keep the decibel limitation in there, but people have indicated that maybe barking at a considerably lower decibel level is a nuisance or annoying, not simply, that the decibel level may be an essential part of it, but not the only thing, because what's unreasonable. For our purposes, an objective standard, in my opinion, would be a conviction. So that would give the owner considerable effort to make sure there's no unreasonable barking. Because as a matter of balancing the principles here, in my opinion, there's no doubt that the neighborhood is entitled to be protected from unreasonable barking and howling. Does anybody, though, I'm an attorney, anybody who's an attorney knows the question is, what does unreasonable mean? And that can be a very subjective thing. Faint barking here and then, my own opinion is, that's part of life. On the other hand, we respect private property rights in this country. And if somebody owns property and there's a special use which is currently allowed by law, taking that right away from them is something we should not do lightly. Based on what I've heard tonight, I'm kind of inclined to agree with Commissioner Jose that if we were to deny this petition, we should simply outlaw outdoor dog boarding anywhere in the village. Because in this neighborhood, the neighbors got organized. Is that going to be the measure of whether or not a special use is approved, is how organized the neighborhood is? I'm not sure. Basically, that's, we may need a more objective standard. And I don't know if the commissioners that intend to vote no would support voting that there should be no outdoor dog daycare, no outdoor dog play areas anywhere in the village. There apparently is one now on Rogers Street, which apparently isn't required. I guess I want to come back to my final topic, and this is something where I'm a little bit at a loss of how to proceed, is on the science of it. Because I'll just be very blunt. I don't believe, as a matter of scientific fact, the barking will be as loud as many of you fear it will be. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, the consequences of my being wrong are very bad for all of you. But I've been reading that for as the distance doubles, the sound falls by 6 decibels. At a far enough distance, the sound will be faint and dissipated. How far is far enough? And I certainly do not want to support a petition that would subject the neighborhood to barking, howling dogs. On the other hand, I'm not persuaded that this facility will do that. And if they do that, I want a remedy where I would have the power to revoke the special use, if in fact the neighborhood is subjected to barking, howling dogs, because you're entitled to live without that. But you're not entitled to live without certain noises, a part of a more urban environment, if it falls below a certain level. What that level is, some sound studies, so you talk about being airtight, but the sound travels in waves, and there's ways of interfering with the waves. There's also expensive active sound suppression systems. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can be done. Airtight isn't the only way to suppress sound. So I'm stuck with balancing property rights and the right of the people to use their business with the right of the neighborhood to the quiet enjoyment of their property. I think I'll listen to what the mayor has to say, and then I'll think about what I want to do.
Thank you, Commissioner. And the first thing the mayor is going to say is the mayor, by position, cannot make motions or second motions. So any motions to do something other than what's on the table has to come from my colleagues to the left or the right. I cannot, in my position, either make a motion or second a motion. I can only ask for motions. And I've only heard one been proposed from anyone, either who's voiced their opinion one way or the other. So to the extent that there may be something else out there, it's not before us for discussion right now, but could be. So I will simply say that. I also don't have a speech prepared. I'm just looking at the criteria, and I'll just hit on 4 things: history, distance, existing conditions, special conditions, and the power to revoke a special use. I have more history up here than any of my colleagues, and that just makes me old, nothing else. But I've seen this movie before, with all due respect, in other neighborhoods with other things at other times. And it almost never, ever is as bad as everyone thinks it is. And I can't remember one instance where a year or 2 years later, everyone came forward and said, "See, I told you so." Just haven't seen it. So I have the benefit of history and review mirror. I understand no one in this audience has that. God help you if you did. But I've seen this happen over and over again. So it's not that I don't care. It's not that I don't empathize with you. It's just I have the benefit of actually seeing this play out numerous times. Not exactly your situation, but similar. Distance here, as some of my colleagues have mentioned, is a big factor. I've been in your neighborhood up and down the street more times than I can count. I went to high school in Downers Grove. I know the neighborhood. I've been down there a million times. I also remember very distinctly, because I was sitting here when the Family Shelter Service went in, and I remember the comments both for and against about that facility. And I think the comment that was made is that there was opposition to it. I don't think anyone was comparing a women's shelter to animals. That may have just been miscommunicated or misperceived. But I do remember the opposition in the neighborhood to having that in the neighborhood. But the distance here is a big factor for me, as has been mentioned. And I went back and walked it again twice after 2 weeks ago. That's a very big factor here. And then the existing conditions of this commercial space, which has many commercial uses that make a lot of noise, maybe different noise, but they make noise, is also a big factor in my mind. But then on top of that, the 3 criteria of a special use approval under section 2812.050H of our ordinance were read earlier to you, so I won't repeat them. But there's another piece that I always have to remind everybody of, which is there's another section called 2812.050G3, which says that particularly with respect to the part about whether or not the particular use in the particular case will be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity or be injurious to the property values improvements in the vicinity, the village council, under the other section I read, is authorized to impose such conditions or restrictions upon the premises benefited by a special use as the council determines to be necessary to ensure compliance with the standards of section 12050H, which I just read from, to reduce or minimize the effect of the special use upon other properties in the area and to better carry out the general public intent of the zoning ordinance. So what that simply means is that there could be a lot of debate about what's detrimental, what's injurious, and it's almost always speculative to some degree because no one really knows what's going to happen. A lot of it is driven by fear of the unknown and change. And not saying that any of that is inappropriate, it's human nature. I get that. But that's why when we hear issues, we do have the power to impose conditions, and it's why we have proposed conditions. There may be more proposed conditions I'm hearing, which I'm perfectly fine with, because I'm convinced that the conditions that have been proposed will actually mitigate the concerns under Section H3. But my last point being the revocation of special use, I don't recall a special use ever being revoked either, but in all the time I've served in the village council, I don't recall anyone ever asking to. I've never been presented with a request to do so, probably because people followed the rules and didn't violate the special use, or if they couldn't, they abandoned it and left. So I turn to the petitioner, and I will say what I've said to other petitioners in this very situation, is that when we impose conditions on special uses and they are not met, you have my word, I will revoke it faster than I can say the word special use. And I've said that before, and I fully mean it. I've never had occasion to do it because people follow the rules for the most part, because otherwise they will lose their special use, which is extremely detrimental to the petitioner because there goes their entire business and their investment. So you betcha they've got a lot of incentive and motivation to make sure that special use is met and play well with the neighbors and become part of the neighborhood that came together with respect to this issue. So that's kind of where I'm at with respect to what's currently on the table. I will pause because I've heard talk about people making motions or modifications, but none have been made.
Mayor Tully, I move that we add an additional condition to the special use, namely that the number of dogs be limited to 94. And I'll explain my reason once there's a second.
There's a motion to amend, there's a second.
Okay. Basically, the way I came up with 94 is I took 88 plus 100 divided by 2.
The discussion on the motion to amend. Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. Given the principal objection to the petition has been the outdoor play area and the number of dogs in the outdoor play area, the noise therefrom, and numerous statements from folks that have objected to the outdoor play area saying they wouldn't have a problem if all the dogs were inside. I'm wondering if this really makes a difference.
Thank you. Other discussion on the motion to amend?
Public comment.
Well, just asking if anybody else has any comments or questions on it first. All right, I'll ask for public comment on the motion to amend only. This is only the motion to amend to cap the number of dogs in the facility at 94. And please, you have to come down to the podium, otherwise no one at home will hear you. And I'm sorry if there are occasions when you can't hear us, but I want to make sure that people at home can hear you. Well, I guarantee you'll never have a problem hearing me.
Sharon McIntosh, 7233 Lyman Avenue. My question was, is there day dogs too? Is that just boarding dogs is the 90-something? Is there also going to be dogs dropped off during the day while people are at work added to that amount?
I suppose my understanding would be 94 dogs at any one time.
Total.
At any one time. So if one, yeah.
Yes, please.
In terms of the underlying issue of the undesirability of the outside play area, whether or not we have the total number of dogs limited, it's not relevant to that particular question. I personally...
You raised it as a bill in the ordinance, or somebody else raised it.
No, I raised it. I think it is a valid point to put in there. I don't know if I'm in order. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion to amend to cap the number of animals in the facility at any one point in time to 94?
I'm sorry, yes. I'd just like to make one brief comment that I do believe the number of dogs could have an impact on the number of dogs outside. In other words, if there are more dogs in the facility, it increases the likelihood of having more dogs outside, affecting the concern about the noise. So I see the logic of a total limit on the number of dogs.
Not more than 35 at any one time, but there will be more dogs outside in the aggregate during the day because there's more dogs that need to go outside.
Yes. I actually understood that. Yes, questions or comments on the motion to amend to add a cap of no more than 90 for animals in the facility one more time? There was a new speaker, if you don't mind, Mr. Sharp, thank you.
You have to come to...
Well, sir, actually, I witnessed earlier, if you ask your question, make your statement, I'll do my best to repeat it.
Yes.
Or even better, just one moment, sir, if we can indulge your patience. I think the least we can do for your service to this country is bring you a microphone. Mr. Kozlowski will have that set up in a moment, and it is important that we wait because I do want to make sure that folks who watch this meeting later can actually hear what was said. Thank you for your patience, sir.
When this whole issue came, is it loud enough?
Yes, sir.
When this whole issue was brought to us, it was 88 dogs. Now we're even changing that. So,
Oh, actually, I think that it was 88 rooms, and the question that was asked was, well, how many dogs are actually translated
we
into?
just found that out now, but I think the citizens all were of the impression that it was 88 rooms for 88 dogs. At least I was, anyway.
Understood. And then we learned that sometimes there can be a family of dogs in
Yes,
a
sir.
room, which would potentially increase that number. So we were trying to put a cap on it.
Well, cap it at 88, my suggestion. Thank you.
Once again, I can't make motions.
Well, I don't know who I'm talking to,
But thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience, comments from the audience with respect to the motion to amend? Yes, Mr. Sharp, please.
From the point of view of the outside play area, the key metric is the 35 dogs, not the total number. And you're certainly correct, Commissioner White. I did raise the 88 number because frankly, if you have the facility like this, I think it's very important for the protection of the residents that there be a cap, so it's not 500 dogs. With regard quickly to the number of dogs in the play area, obviously, number one, we oppose the play area. But assuming there were one, the 35 number is excessive. It's excessive by any metric, including, as I understand it, the American Kennel Boarding Association, which says that you're supposed to have 75 square feet per dog in a play area. For an average-sized dog, there's 1,668 square feet here. If you divide that by 75, you don't get anywhere near 35. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. So the motion to amend, any other further questions on the motion to amend? Any further discussion from the village council with respect to the motion to amend? Commissioner Earl.
Actually, what I'd like some clarification on is from the staff on the revocation of the special use, because I know when I talked with staff that there was talk of the revocation of special use, the code enforcement going not necessarily immediately to code enforcement, but and going through the courts, but coming to us. Could you talk more to that?
Is that germane to the amendment? Or is that germane to the...
We'll have more discussion once we get back.
Okay, well, never mind. We can hold that question.
This
It's not germane to the
Give you a chance to
amendment,
chew on it.
I apologize.
No, it's all right. Any further discussion with the council with respect to the motion to amend? All right, I'm going to call the roll on the motion to amend only at this point. Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Nay.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Nay.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Motion to amend passes 5-2. So what that means is that the motion that was earlier made to approve the special use now has an additional condition to it. If it should pass, we haven't called the vote on it yet. So I will now ask for further discussion from the council with respect to the amended motion to adopt the ordinance that would grant a special use for a dog boarding facility in the location we've been discussing tonight.
I'm going to make a second motion to add a condition, and that condition will be that upon conviction in the circuit court of a violation of section 15-5.1B, that no person shall keep within the village any dog or other animal which makes an unreasonable barking, howling, or other noise which disturbs the peace. Upon conviction of the circuit court, that shall by itself be grounds to bring the matter before the village council to consider revocation of the special use.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second with respect to...
And staff has comment, so.
There's a motion and a second with respect to a further amendment. We'll call this amendment number 2. Manager Fieldman, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Tully. Thank you. It's a good opportunity to answer Commissioner Earl's question as it relates to the motion on the table. The traditional code enforcement requires documentation of an alleged violation by the village staff, and then we take it to DuPage County Circuit Court, also known as Field Court or Traffic Court, and a judge presides over that hearing. It can be a very lengthy process with notification, et cetera. Usually judges granting continuances, very cumbersome on many occasions. The way this ordinance is drafted, if there are any violations to the conditions of the special use ordinance, staff would simply schedule a hearing before the village council, and the village council would be in the role of deciding what steps to take, amend, or revoke the special use. That would be a much quicker process, getting right in front of the ultimate decision makers. As it relates to Commissioner White's motion on the table, given that the ordinance has the condition in it that would allow us to take any noise-related barking type issues to the council, it would be highly unlikely that we would ever file a violation to 15.51B before a court. It would make much more sense to bring the special use hearing in front of the council. So I don't see any scenario under which we would have even a citation under 15.51B. It would almost always come in front of this council.
So to translate, you're basically saying that the addition wouldn't help a whole lot, or not achieve the intended result.
Highly unlikely to achieve the intended result.
We have more power into the special use ordinance.
Correct.
And faster.
Correct.
And it comes straight here.
Correct.
More control.
My comment would be is that the amendment does not limit any existing remedies, it simply adds a new one.
That's correct.
And if on some levels it requires reaching, basically the type of thing where things have to be really bad before you go to circuit court, that's true. But what I'm trying to get at is address the comments made by Commissioner Barnett, that simply looking at decibel levels may not be sufficient to address the situation. And it may be that a judge will find that barking at 50 decibels is not unreasonable. And that's the end of it. So I'm trying to add an extra layer, sort of belt and suspenders, an extra layer.
Likely the judge would look back at our zoning code to determine the decibel level, so we're really at the same point.
But there'd be opportunity to make a case. This goes to Commissioner Barnett's intention or desire to incorporate some of the concept of nuisance or unreasonable barking, which may not reach the level of 65 decibels. Any comments?
Commissioner Barnett.
Yeah, thanks. What a judge may likely do or may likely not do, no element right now without this amendment of the ordinance has a provision for revocation as a function of nuisance. That's the differential. There are certainly other opportunities to revoke that could come much quicker, much faster. None of those would be prevented, as Commissioner White said, from adding this. But it does add a different method and a different reason for potential revocation. And that's, I guess, my issue, is that the revocation methods right now, the reasoning behind them are ones that I don't think apply to the concerns that the residents have. That's sort of my problem with the ordinance. The special use restrictions speak to an issue. I mean, it speaks to an issue that's very specific, and there's a very specific method for determining whether there's a violation and bringing it back here, but none of it speaks to this issue, which is the nuisance element. Obviously, it would have to be an interesting situation and one that had an awful lot of people upset if we were somehow brought back to us from our staff a court order that said somebody was in violation and therefore we should reconsider it. But what we're trying to do here, no small part of what any of our ordinances do, is create an environment of expectations and then likely behaviors as a function of those. And so adding this, I think, adds a different aspect. The dogs bark when you don't pay attention to them, as Commissioner Earl said, but running DBA tests doesn't talk about the staff guy that's in checking his phone. It just doesn't.
From staff's perspective, all special uses are required to be operated in a manner consistent with public health, safety, and welfare pursuant to all village codes, ordinances, and regulations. So we could bring a show cause hearing to amend or revoke a special use for violations of any ordinances throughout our codes at any time. That's sort of the main point of the special use. So whether we put that in the ordinance or not, we have that right as a village.
So whether or not, so basically, you could bring this back to the village to hear whether to revoke the special use based on almost, an independent assessment of whether there's a violation of the ordinance that we don't need.
That's correct.
So it sure doesn't add anything.
Right. So what would happen really functionally is if the staff felt there was a violation of 15.5.1B, we would immediately determine that that appears to be a violation of the conditions of approval for any special use, particularly this special use. It would again result in bringing a show cause hearing in front of this council instead, because it's quicker and directly involves the decision makers of a land use case.
Now, walk me through this, because if a neighbor were to call and complain, they would get code enforcement. Could you walk me through what steps we're talking about here, how this would proceed? Do they just have to sign a complaint and then this goes forward, or how does that work?
In cases like this, we would respond to any complaint or concern filed with any staff member, police, or code enforcement. We would send either or both of those departments to the site to observe and document. If staff felt there were a violation to any of our ordinances, we would have the right to bring it to court or bring it back to the council. Or work with the, yes, that's a good point. The first step we do if we know any violation is bring it to the attention of the petitioner, property owner, work with them to give them an opportunity to remedy the situation immediately.
So how quickly could, if the remedy didn't, you've been called, you've made contact with the petition, or the people who have, dogs are barking, and you've made contact with them, you've worked with them, things don't seemingly get better, in what kind of a time frame are we talking about? A couple of weeks, a couple of weeks, then they're right here back in front of us.
Yes, the same group that decided on the granting the special use in the first place, which from a staff perspective is key. The court would not have that perspective, as the attorney just mentioned. This would be a land use case and a special use case. In most of these situations, when an issue is brought to the attention of a business owner, it's addressed nearly immediately. It's rare that it's not. We have a couple of them that we've heard about here and there. And when those go to court, they tend to drag out.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Barnett?
I think Commissioner White was trying to get to some sort of an objective standard by introducing the element of the conviction to it. As I just heard, I think Commissioner White was trying to get to some objectivity when he introduced the idea of the court, and I appreciate that. What I think I heard from staff was something that I perhaps didn't recognize before. Maybe I was the only one up here, but that the special use itself is by its right, by its nature, contingent upon no other violations within our code. Is that what I?
Compliance with village code. Correct.
Compliance with all other village code.
Yes.
I missed that, I guess, if that's there. But that being the case, then my concerns really aren't concerns anymore. I don't think I understood that to be the case, that some other element of our code, any other element of our code, could generate a hearing before this council for revocation of the special use. That's a pretty important distinction. So as long as we're totally clear on that, it's new to me.
And that wouldn't go just for the barking, I believe.
right.
That would go
Everything.
for waste that wasn't picked up, or
Correct.
trash that wasn't picked up, or anything to those effects.
Yeah, we really haven't talked about special use ordinances in this much detail at this level, but it's in every special use ordinance. It is the petitioner's obligation to maintain compliance with all applicable federal, state, county, village laws, ordinances, regulations, and policies. That's a boilerplate. So, yes, it's in every one.
Is there a seminar on that?
I'm sure there is.
Well,
Yeah, we've
it's
never,
actually section 4 of the ordinance is in front of us.
yeah, we've never talked about other village codes causing revocation, and I guess that's,
Said it is the petitioner's obligation to maintain compliance with all applicable federal, state, county, and village laws, ordinances, regulations, and policies. It's part of the ordinance.
Let me make a couple comments before I ask Commissioner Barnett's permission to withdraw the motion. And that is this. Bottom line, I agree with Mayor Tully. I mean, my honest opinion, I could be wrong. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying that I know for a fact I'm right, but I believe that once this operation is up and running, it will not be as bad as everyone thinks it is. If it is, well, item 4 on the agenda is public comment. And anybody can come to that microphone anytime they want, in any meeting. And if this isn't on the agenda, then you can speak up at public comment. I do not want the neighborhood subjected to unreasonable barking or howling, period. I also, at this moment, am not persuaded that this facility will cause that. And that's a question of scientific objective. It's not a matter of, it's just, I just don't know what the science is. And I believe there are ways to dampen and mitigate the noise. If I'm wrong, we have the power to revoke. With that, I'll move to withdraw the second proposed amendment with the permission of the seconder.
yeah, the seconder gives permission, to be sure.
He's giving permission.
The seconder gives permission for withdrawing the motion to amend.
It's redundant. Yeah.
The record will reflect that motion withdrawn.
Yeah, the
Second amendment. So now we still have just for everyone who's got their scorecards out and is following this. We still have the original motion to adopt the ordinance allowing a dog boarding facility as amended by the 94 animal cap.
seconder wants to still point something out, Mayor, if I
He's still
could.
talking.
We're establishing a record, and I'm thankful for that. The ordinance is drafted, makes several mentions in several places about revocation of special use granted herein. Does not do that in those other sections. I'm fine, I don't have to put it in, I don't have to adjust it, but it's a distinction that is first coming to the surface at this hearing that I've not witnessed before. Because every other special use that I've been party to, we put those words in there that these are certain elements that we add, not the boilerplate pieces of the document, the elements that we add cite revocation as a remedy for those issues. It's not cited that way elsewhere. I believe that it is, I'm not arguing with you, it's a little different. So let the record make clear that that's the intention of section 4 and 5.
I think that's now very clear.
Okay. Well then, let me finish my comments about the whole subject. I think, as I stated before, that this is, our ordinance contemplates the use here, and because for good reason. We all think it probably is a reasonable use there. It's just a question about control, and we've got lots of vehicles by which to do that now. If I've wasted our time, I apologize.
I wasted more of it.
Let's not debate that topic. Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck, thank you for being so patient.
No, not a problem. I'm trying to keep the scorecard here, and I'm running out of space.
We won't go 18 innings.
I think when Commissioner Earl was going over the process with the village manager, I think it was overly simplified. You hear it bark, you call code enforcement or the police, they come out, the person has to sign a complaint or submit a complaint, making them an official complainant, and that doesn't automatically create a need for the test and coming back for the special use and all the other things. I think it's going to be, is it more true It's not going to be one complaint. It's going to be multiple complaints. It's going to be to the point where the village manager, at his discretion, says, we're going to do a test. And then a test is conducted, and then we go through what I had mentioned before. You go out and get, hire some, not the village, but the petitioner goes out, gets a test made, and maybe by that time the noisier dogs are put inside. It's much more complex than just, oh, I hear a dog barking, it's really loud and it's consistent, and I want to put in a complaint, and then it winds up for special use. It's a very complex remedy. It's not all that simple. And you heard from other people tonight about code enforcement and the process, and it isn't easy, and you keep going back, and you say fix it, and then they say they do, and then they don't, and then you go back again, and you keep starting over. And it's not only what you heard tonight, but all of us have gotten emails from people having development in their neighborhoods. Somebody had a porta potty put on their driveway. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff, and it isn't as simple as there's a problem, oh, we'll take away the special use. It isn't an easy remedy, and that's the problem. If it was an easy remedy, I could even go for it. I think maybe Commissioner Barnett had a good idea in that we started addressing, getting into some real remedies where people can actually trust that there's going to be an actual remedy and not just an assortment of keep calling, keep calling, keep calling. I wouldn't mind making a motion to approve the special use without the outdoor facility. As a matter of fact, I'll make that motion. I'll move that we approve the special use for this facility without an outdoor facility.
So just to restate that, your motion is to amend, we'll call this the third motion to amend, the previously amended ordinance to require that there be no outdoor play facility, that all play facilities be conducted inside the facility. Is that what you meant?
Precisely.
All right, there's a further motion to amend that's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. It's discussion with the council, the motion to amend. Questions or comments?
I think I've made my comments.
Very well.
Leading up to.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Barnett.
Thanks, Mayor. The process by which you would revoke a right shouldn't be terribly easy. As the Mayor talked about, what we're doing here is balancing and managing property rights. And as one who was had severe reservations about this going forward because of this remedy question, it's still important to remember that there are two sets of property rights being balanced here. And so I think it's important, and as it speaks to this outdoor area, the outdoor area is not really spoken to in terms of the special use. And I don't see, with the remedies available to us, how that shouldn't be a potential that's engaged, and we see how it goes. I happen to agree with Commissioner White. I live, 700 feet from one of the boarding facilities in town. I will be surprised if this turns into a problem. What I wanted to do was make sure we had a method of dealing with it when it did. I think we do.
If it does.
If it does, thank you. But I don't think the indoor-outdoor is a fair restriction to put on. I think behaving as a good neighbor and managing the noise and managing the sound is the fair restriction to put on, not the indoor-outdoor question.
Thank you. Further discussion from the council on the third motion to amend? Questions or comments from the audience on the third motion to amend? I'm going to guess that we can shortcut this. Everybody in the audience who would like to see it enclosed, raise your hand. All right. No, we don't need to have you come up and tell us that. Thank you. Sure.
going back to what Commissioner Barnett said earlier on, and he asked the question, how much do the residents have to endure? And I think that's the right question, and that goes to the heart of what you're trying to accomplish here. You're trying to have an objective standard that you can apply across the board, one in which other jurisdictions close by have done the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Sir, I heard 2 or 3 people up on the board say that, oh, I'm not sure this is going to be right, but this is what I think. Well, I think we should err on the side of caution. As I say, I'm a disabled Vietnam veteran with PTSD, and there are certain frequencies that hit that end me up on the floor and end me up at Hinsdale Hospital. At Hines Hospital. And Downers Grove Fire Department won't take me to Hines Hospital. They'll only take me to a local hospital, and I have to go to Hines. So if that happens to me, is the city willing to foot the bill?
Can't answer that question, sir, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I asked it last time.
Not a quick answer to this time.
I asked it last time, and nobody wanted to answer it either.
No, it's not a desire not to answer your question. I am literally not equipped to answer your question.
Okay.
It would be unfair for me to take a wild stab at something I'm not equipped to answer.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies. Sure, yes, please.
Jeff McGill, 1040 Pinewood Drive, 2 doors away from the entrance to the proposed facility. What I want to reiterate again is the subjective reality, and as it relates to satisfying the third criteria, as I think wrongly passed by the Planning Commission. And that's the nature of this very discussion. The deliberation itself confirms that this has a negative impact on our property value. Why are we taking so much time on this? Consider this whole process as a microcosm of what goes on in the mind of every possible buyer of our property. Commissioner White, you addressed it, you said it as well as I could have possibly wanted. You said, I just don't know. I can't really say. As a buyer of my property, and you look over and see Beaton Max, you want to buy this? You want to buy my house? I might say, look, that kennel is no problem. Well, I just don't know. I'm just not sure about it. I'm going to walk away from it.
Let me make just a brief comment right now. I don't know at this moment. After Beaton Max is built, a prospective buyer could stand in your driveway and listen.
Prospective buyers are going to stand in my driveway and listen what, for 24 hours a day to see whether that's a problem?
Gentlemen, please, thank you.
I'm responding.
I actually am going to ask both of you to stop the interpersonal exchange, please. Yes, please, this is on the motion to amend only.
My name is Cindy Torrey, and I live at 7217 Webster Street. So do any other facilities have 35 dogs allowed out?
This is just on the motion to amend, ma'am. Where the discussion with respect to the original motion is closed, this is only whether you are commenting on keeping it enclosed. Is that,
Yes.
That's...
Okay, yes, I want it enclosed because no one else allows 35 dogs outside at a time. So that's my comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, don't know the answer to that question. Any other questions or comments on the third motion to amend? Yes, please. Certainly no one's going to accuse us of having just decided this and rushed it through, are they?
I'm Sonia Cash. I live at 1011 Pinewood. I live in Hidden Pines. I'm on the north border, and I would like to see the facility enclosed with no outdoor facilities for 35 dogs.
Thank you, and I do appreciate that's what everyone raised their hands for, was basically to say that, so we didn't have to have 35 people all repeat the same thing. I appreciate that. Okay, thank you for your comments. Any further discussion from the council on the motion to amend? I'll just add that I appreciate the motion and the intent from my colleagues, but there are two things here. Number one, it's not about inside or outside, it's really about the objective, which is not disturbing the neighborhood, and we have other ways to achieve that. I'm not so convinced that just keeping indoor outdoors is going to necessarily get to what you want, so I'm not too sure about that. But furthermore, we always try to accommodate these things by addressing as best we can to varying degrees, and not going to make everybody happy. Rarely do we make everybody happy. It's just not possible. But trying to do that in the least intrusive manner possible, and before going to more extreme measures such as eliminating or basically the effect of outlawing something in our community without the proper discussion that would normally lead up to that for a community-wide impact, I think it's best and wiser to try less intrusive measures, which is why I think some of the conditions that have been proposed in direct reaction to the input from the community are the more appropriate way to go. And if those are not sufficient, then the other alternative is to withdraw the special use, and there will be no dog boarding facility, which is the only way to ensure that there's no barking. So with that, I will call a roll on the motion to amend the previously amended ordinance to require a further condition that the play area be entirely enclosed or quote-unquote indoors.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace.
Aye.
Commissioner Earl.
Nay.
Commissioner White.
Nay.
Commissioner Jose.
Nay.
Commissioner Barnett.
Nay.
Mayor Tully.
Nay. The motion to amend fails 5-2. All right, I don't know if we need any further discussion of the underlying motion, and certainly we've had a great deal of community input and comment, all of which is greatly appreciated. Again, I'll just remind everyone that whether or not, I don't know how this is going to go, but whether or not it passes or fails, there have been changes in discussion that were brought about only because of the input and engagement by those in the audience. So even folks on one side or the other, either petitioner or neighbors or others, there were some of your neighbors who actually were in support of this. They probably didn't feel like being here tonight, but there were some. Won't tell you who they are. But regardless of where you are on this issue, I think it's pretty easy to say that we had a really good conversation about it, and changes that were made and conditions that were imposed were done as a direct result of the request and the efforts of the neighborhood working with our staff, the petitioner, and the village council. So for that, I appreciate it because it's a truly good example of civic involvement.
So I did have something very brief I wanted to say.
Of course.
Well, just my final comment is that this decision is a balancing of property rights of competing interests. And if it were to be denied in this case, I don't see why we could allow this special use anywhere in the village. And that's a legitimate question, but we do allow this special use under our current ordinance, and the owner of the property has their own property rights as well. And the final very fast comment on this is that if in fact it's an unreasonable situation, the owner has every incentive to mitigate the problem, because the revocation of the special use would be the death penalty for their business after they open it. Now, just because somebody doesn't like it won't be enough. We'll need some real evidence that it's unreasonable. But if they don't dampen the noise, there's some serious consequences, so they have every incentive to dampen the noise.
Thank you. Actually, it would be out of order at this point, but we can certainly talk with you offline after the meeting, of course. We're always available for that. With that, I will call a roll on the motion to adopt the ordinance authorizing special use for 7221 Lamont Road to permit an animal boarding facility as amended to put a cap on total number of animals at any one time of 94.
Commissioner White.
Aye.
Commissioner Jose.
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace.
Nay.
Commissioner Earl.
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Nay.
Commissioner Barnett.
Aye.
Mayor Tully.
Aye. Motion passes 5-2. And I'm just going to ask a real quick question before we go on. Is Ms. Lockerbie still in the audience? Thank you for your patience. I'm going to ask that we take your item out of order and do it right now. Actually, my apologies to you. I should have taken it out of order and done it before that. Why don't we take 2 seconds? I sense people leaving, so as not to disrupt our proceedings. I'm going to give you all a minute to do so.
Any special use, any special use permit can be revoked as a function of violating the village ordinance.
Yeah.
It's a whole different animal.
I know.
I mean, I'm okay with it.
All right, very good. Let's move on with our agenda. I'm going to ask, with the consent of my colleagues, to move directly to item 7D as in David. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution granting historic landmark designation for 4709 Linscott Avenue?
Bertolli, I move that this council adopt a resolution granting historic landmark designation for 4709 Linscott Avenue as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? In the interest of time, I will dispense with my lengthy expression of gratitude for both your patience, Ms. Lockerbie, as well as volunteering to do this with your home. It's really wonderful that you're doing this for not just yourself, but also for the community. And I'd like to present you with this certificate, if you wouldn't mind. You're probably welcome getting up at this point.
Mayor, should we take a vote?
Should we do a vote, Mr. Brown?
Oh!
Yeah.
Details.
Details. You guys are such sticklers for details. I'm going to do this, the first standing roll call. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. I was so certain it was going to pass, I got up and gave you the certificate. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry. I should have asked you to move it up earlier. Thank you so much, and congratulations. Thank you. And if there's anything you'd like to say about the home entirely, if you are like the hours late, but I didn't want to deprive you of the opportunity. No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Note to self, next time move up the historic designations. All right, thank you. We'll now return to our active agenda, item 7B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance granting a stormwater variance, at 4710 Highland Avenue?
Bertolli, I move that this council adopt an ordinance granting a stormwater variation for 4710 Highland Avenue as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that motion passed unanimously. That brings us to the last item on our active agenda, item 7C as in Charlie. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance amending water rates?
Bertolli, I move that this council adopt an ordinance amending water rates as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments on this item from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that passed unanimously and brings us to the end of our active agenda and right into our first reading of our workshop agenda. This is an opportunity for items to be presented for discussion and consideration only. No final action will be taken at this time. As we customarily do, village staff, primarily through our village manager, David Fieldman, will present each of the items for discussion. And we usually start with questions from the village council, and then we'll open it up for any questions or comments from the audience thereafter. Good evening, Mr. Fieldman.
Good evening,
Who is
Mayor
going to
Tully.
turn the ball over immediately to Director of Village Planning, Stan Popovich.
I will do so regarding the first two items regarding St. Joseph's Church and School. Stan.
Thank you, Manager Fieldman.
Good evening, Mr. Popovich.
Mayor and Council. This is a rezoning special use and a variation for St. Joseph's School and Church. As we all know, St. Joe's is immediately north of our downtown here on Main Street. Property here outlined in green on the west side of Main Street's parking lot and rectory. There's a church on the north side on the southwest corner of Main and Prairie. Schools at Highland and Franklin, and then there's a single-family residence home on Highland Avenue that the church owns as well. Petitioner is proposing to rezone the west property on Main Street and the R6 property here shown to an INP1 zoning classification. They're requesting to leave the existing single-family home as an R4 single-family zoning district classification. This would, the INP1 zoning would take care of the parking lot in the school, parking lot, and the church as well. What the petitioner is also proposing to do is that parking lot on the west side of Main Street. Here you can see the parking lot on the north side, the rectory on the south side. They're proposing to demolish the rectory building and add a new parking lot. As you can see, the parking lot on the west side is an existing nonconformity. They're proposing to expand that further south, which requires a variance, so it stays in line with the existing parking lot there on the west side. They're proposing hedgerow and some fences along that west property line. Additionally, you see the parking lot, they're getting rid of one of the curb cuts on Main Street and replacing that with a curb cut off of Franklin Street, which provides better circulation internally onto the site and not having two cuts out onto Main Street. Landscape plan, you can see they're extensively landscaping this where as required. Also, to capture stormwater, they're proposing a rain garden in the south portion of the property. The topography is sloped such that this is where the water would go naturally that way, so it will assist with the rain garden there as required by our stormwater ordinance. The comprehensive plan, both the current and the draft update, it's institutional public. It notes that we should support schools, both public and private, and institutions. These are the standards that are required. Staff's found that these standards are met. If there's any questions at this time, I can answer them for you. The petitioner is also here tonight to answer any questions that you might have as well.
Terrific, thank you, Stan. Questions from the council on this item? Questions?
Yes, Stan, the rezoning isn't taking place on the parcel that faces the single-family parcel?
Correct.
Okay, it's just the rest of it is going IMP1?
Correct, because the
Thank you.
home is still going to remain a single-family home.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else? Questions or comments from the audience or anything the petitioner wants to add? No obligation. Terrific, thank you. Next item, please.
Item C is a motion directing staff to negotiate key terms of a contract extension with Republic Services. This is known as our garbage contract. Here to present information on this item is our Deputy Village Manager, Mike Baker.
Solid waste removal contract, I prefer to call it. Thank you.
Yes, yes, this is obviously an important service provided by a contractor the village has had a long-standing relationship with. This action would allow staff to begin the process of negotiating directly with the waste hauler to determine if we can come up with a mutually agreeable solution. It would be brought back to council for further consideration within approximately 30 to 45 days. The contract does not actually expire until March 30th of 2018, so we have ample time to evaluate options and make final decisions. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Questions, comments from the council? No, I just wanted to say that all the years that I've had the privilege of serving up here, staff has done a terrific job of managing our solid waste refuse contracts in various ways that ultimately have, I think, delivered better service and at a good value to the community. And how do we know that? We rarely hear complaints from the community about this key service, which to me, silence in that respect is a huge attaboy. Now, having said that, I probably jinxed it, and we're going to hear 20 things tomorrow. So let's see what we can do, and as you say, we always have time to come back and go out to a full-blown RFP. Thank you. Questions or comments on this from members of the audience? Terrific. Next item, please.
The remaining items on the first reading agenda have to do with the construction of water main improvements and the financing of those improvements. Here to present information on all these items is our Public Works Director, Nan Newell.
Thank you. Good evening, Nan. This is everything through G?
Oh, excuse me, through G, but then Nan will stay up there and do the last one as well. So
H.
I'll just introduce Nan for the balance of the first reading.
It's proving I'm paying attention still.
And I may not be.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. If you don't mind, I'm going to combine items D, E, F, and G together. They're all related to a little bit over $2.5 million of water main replacements we're planning for 2017. The first item is related to a loan agreement with the IEPA. This is the second of about 5 years we plan to do IEPA low-interest loans. This loan is for $1,871,921.48, and the term is 1.64% interest compared to what would be 2.8% interest with municipal bonds. So that will save us about $248,000 in financing for this work. This, as I said, this is the second year of loans for IPA using this tool for financing. So that is the first item. The next three items are the three contracts we're proposing to construct this year, and items E and F are both planned to be financed with the low-interest loan from the IEPA. Item E and F are both contracts that we're recommending award of contract A and B to Swallow Construction Company of Downers Grove, Illinois. Contract A is in the amount of $1,052,739.25, and that includes the replacement of 2,740 feet of 8-inch water main on Douglas Street between Prairie and Wilson, on Grant Street between Sealy and Oakwood, and on Prospect Avenue between Prairie and Warren. We did have 11 bidders for that contract. The second contract that we're recommending for award with Swallow Construction is in the amount of $764,660.25, is 1,865 feet of 8-inch water main on Gear Street from Fairview to Florence, on Stonewall from 62nd to 63rd, and on Maple from Carpenter to Lane Place. And on that contract, we received 10 bidders. Swallow Construction has completed similar projects for several communities, including the city of Aurora and Glen Ellen, as well as work completed for the village's 2014 and 2015 water main replacement contracts. And staff recommends approval of the contract with Swallow for A and B. The last item, which is item G, is award of a contract for contract C, which is to Trine Construction Corporation of West Chicago in the amount of $735,020. This is for the replacement of a little over 2,000 feet of water main on Oak Hill Road from Bernard to Saratoga, and on Springside Avenue from the north end of Springside to Brunette. And in this, we also got very competitive bids for this contract as well. We had 9 bidders. And Trine Construction has completed similar projects with good references from communities of Elgin and Des Plaines, and has also completed work in the village in 2014 and 2016. And we similarly recommend approval of this contract C to Trine. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have related to these contracts.
Thank you, Nan. Questions or comments from the council with respect to items 8, D as in David, through G as in Gus? Commissioner Earl.
These contracts don't include the road resurfacing that usually comes after this, correct? That's a separate contractor?
There is road resurfacing included in these contracts, so it'll be done in the same contract.
Same contractor does the road resurfacing? Okay,
Yes.
and that's included. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I was surprised to find that this contract, and I suppose this has been true all through my term up here, so shame on me for not asking the question sooner. But I was surprised to find that the contracts don't require a licensed plumber to actually do the work of replacing a buffalo box and connecting the residents and connecting the main to that buffalo box. I think that's a policy matter that we ought to take up. Should we move forward with these, I'd leave that to my colleagues on the council. But I think this is something we ought to think about moving forward. State law requires a plumbing license for good reason, and I think we should take that into consideration. With regard specifically to Trine Construction, I have some concerns from my day job. I've been involved in some prevailing wage investigation of them, and I have a bit of concern with regard to them not paying the prevailing wage that is due for a plumber. They actually are a licensed plumbing contractor, so I appreciate that they actually are receiving one of the contracts as opposed to it. But I do have concerns about all 3 of these. I'd like to see a policy change moving forward. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallach.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Jose brings up a point, and I didn't put it in any of my questions, and since this is first reading, if staff could get back with Commissioner Jose's concern about using licensed plumbers versus not licensed plumbers, what are the ramifications? And that would be a question I would ask, on a typical Monday morning, so why wait?
Right, although I think that would necessarily have to be a subsequent policy discussion, not with respect to these contracts, since that's not in our specs right now.
That's correct. We're happy to answer those questions.
But it is a general question that one could ask on a typical Monday morning.
Of course.
What are the ramifications of, not specific to these
Gotcha.
contracts?
You threw me off. You threw me off
general.
with Monday morning. I didn't know the shorthand for that. I apologize.
In general,
Now I got
in
you.
general.
I got you.
Okay.
Understood. So we're on the same page. Thank you. Other questions or comments on any of these items, 8D as in David through G as in Gus? Hearing none. Questions or comments from members of the audience? Yes, sir, please.
Promise, mine will be short.
I don't know why you say that. You've got at least another couple hours.
Jim Mansfield, I'm a licensed plumber. Been privileged to work in your area for the past 25 years because I carry a license. The water services, the water main is a separate issue from the water services, which is required to have a registered plumber that is licensed from the state of Illinois. And looking into these contracts, you know, you're getting ready to give over $2.5 million worth of work of taxpayers' dollars on a prevailing wage rate, mind you. I do not see any 055 numbers listed down as your sewer and water contractor for the state of Illinois and Swallow. And I understand there is some prevailing wage interference with your other contractor. Myself, as being a licensed plumber, being privileged to work in your town for the past 25 years, I just asked the board to look at this and do your due diligence to make sure that these residents have a licensed plumber connecting up their services. That's all I ask of you before you make this decision. I think it's a little premature. I think a little bit more homework should be done. All you need to know is who is the licensed plumber, and it's a prevailing wage job to make sure everything's done correctly. And that's all I'm asking you guys to do.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Mayor.
Other questions or comments on any of these items from members of the audience? Very good. Hearing none, then last item, 8H, parking and traffic regulations, please.
Yes. This item is an ordinance to amend various sections of municipal code concerning parking and traffic regulations in the village. I can go through these. 4 of these items went before the Transportation and Parking Commission that I've included here. They're the first 4 listed in your staff report. We are adding 2 15-minute parking spaces between Grove Street and Maple Avenue, one on either side. These were requested by downtown management and the businesses there. We also sent letters to all the businesses on that block, and they all supported the change from 2-hour to 15-minute spaces for these spaces. The second item is addition of stop signs at the intersection of Plymouth Street and 61st Street and Plymouth Street and 62nd Street. Again, this was an item that was requested by neighbors in this area at these 2 uncontrolled intersections, presented at TAP and approved at their recommended for approval at their December 2016 meeting. The third item is a change to parking regulations at Kingsley School during the afternoon pickup periods. This will facilitate a private transportation service that does quite a bit of pickup of children at this school. And this was on Powell Street, and this was presented at the February 2017 Transportation and Parking Commission meeting and recommended for approval by a vote of 6-0. The last of the 4 items presented to TAP and recommend for approval. This is changing the parking regulations at the corner of 61st Street and Lyman Avenue. It's around a curve. There's a pedestrian crossing here and a fire hydrant, and this was brought forward by residents in this area as a safety enhancement, again presented to the Transportation and Parking Commission in February and recommended for approval. The last 3 items on this ordinance are staff-sponsored recommendations. It includes the addition of 2 accessible parking spaces at the Public Works facility. The second one is the addition of crosswalks at 4 locations, Blanchard and Middaugh, Carpenter and Curtis, Blanchard, the second crossing at Middaugh and Blanchard, and 41st and Saratoga. And the last one is regulations of, it's actually a change to the code on Burlington Avenue, east of Fairview, so that the code matches the existing signage, which is working very well at that location. So it's to make the code match the existing signage. So those are the final 3 items, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Nan. Questions from the council? Commissioner Earl.
The downtown 15-minute parking spaces, is there an hour limit that they're 15 minutes, or are they 15 minutes 24/7?
They're 15 minutes 24/7. There is no hour specified. Some businesses are more geared to morning hours, and some are more geared to evening hours. So we have not specified hours on those.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the council? Any questions on these parking traffic items from members of the audience? Hearing none. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our first reading agenda. Thank you. Let's try to help you save your breath there. Very good. Moving right along, that brings us to item 9, Mayor's Report. I have no report at this time, so we'll go right to item 10, the Village Attorney's Report. Ms. Petrarca, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. 4 items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance rezoning certain property located at 4801, 4832 Main Street, and 4824, 4832 Highland Avenue. An ordinance authorizing a special use for 4801 and 4832 Main Street and 4824 and 4832 Highland Avenue to expand the parking lot for a religious assembly use with 2 variations. An ordinance authorizing a loan agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. And finally, an ordinance amending traffic and parking regulations. Thank you, Mayor. That is all.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. That brings us to item 11, Councilmember Reports. This is an opportunity for members of the Village Council to share items of interest or their goings on in the community with those present, or to make a report to the rest of the Village Council in their liaison role. We'll start tonight with Commissioner Jose.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnett.
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner Waldeck's going to remind us about the start of the Downtown Car Show this weekend.
The summer season starts Friday, May 19th, with the car show. But I do encourage everybody to show up, but also check the downtowndg.org for parking restrictions. Extremely important if you want to have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wallace is going to remind us of the Noah's Hope Cupcake Classic this Sunday.
Yes, I am. I just took that off my screen. Noah's Hope Cupcake Classic this Sunday. You can still register, and I lost the website, so give me 1 second.
NoahsHope.com.
Yep, noahshope.com/cupcake.
Yes, I said corrected.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Earl.
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner White.
No report.
Thank you very much. Well, I just have a couple things. Number one, I want to remind everyone again, as Chief Bluter said, what seems to be yesterday, that the Barth Memorial Ceremony will be held on Thursday, May 18th at 1 p.m. at the First Presbyterian Church at 339 4th Street in Downers Grove. Speaking of downtown, the Farmers Market was back this last weekend, and it was perfect weather for it, and downtown was hustling and bustling, which was good to see. So the Farmers Market is back, and last but not least, there are 36 days, 2 hours and 5 minutes and 1 second left till Rotary Grove Fest returns to the street of downtown Downers Grove. And that's the end of my report. We can't adjourn. We do need to go into the committee room and discuss something in the manager's report tonight. So we will recess from here over to the committee room after a 5-minute break because we do need to take up the long-range planning general fund sustainability issue, which is of great importance. So I am going to ask for a motion to recess into the committee room, and we will reconvene in about 5 minutes.
Mayor Tully, I move that the council recess into the committee room.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. We are recessed into the committee room. Thank you for coming. Good night. To discuss the long-range plan, and specifically general fund sustainability. Good evening, Mr. Fielden.
Good evening, Mayor Tully and council, and a few members of the public that are here tonight and still here with us. Thank you. You may recall that during our long-range planning efforts from just a couple of months ago, we identified the issue that the general fund right now is not sustainable in that revenues are not keeping pace with expense increases. At that time, we identified a specific priority action item, which is consider creating new revenue sources or changing existing revenue sources that are consistent with the modern economy. So tonight, we hope to have the council point us in a direction that results in a plan to make the general fund sustainable. The specific recommendations you will hear from the village staff tonight, 2 of them. Number 1, implement a 1% food and beverage tax. Number 2, increase the property tax levy for operations as necessary. I'll work from the whiteboard tonight, but none of this material should be new to the council as I presented it in the agenda packet online, and as the council members know, we met individually on this issue prior to this meeting. We'll start on the far right. There's a graph showing general fund revenues and expenses from 2012 through 2017. This is the same graph that we had up on the whiteboard in February when we identified the issue that the general fund is not sustainable. You may recall that we showed the total general fund revenues and expenses over that time frame, and at first glance it looked sustainable because revenues were continually coming in higher than expenses. You may further recall that we took out of that graph the revenues related to and the expenses related to public safety pension. We had a concern that that was masking the trends on both the expense side and the revenue side. And the reason we removed those from both sides of the graph was because, number one, the public safety pension contributions are required by state law. We have to make them, and we don't directly affect the amount. We just follow what's required by the state. And whatever the required contribution is, we levy that amount, meaning that the public safety pension contributions show up equally on the expense side and on the revenue side. And what we found here was that these other revenue sources had actually been declining 3 of the last 4 years. And in fact, when we updated this graph to have a 2017 estimate, we found on this red line here that it's actually revenues declining 4 of the last 5 years. We've also noted that expenses have been increasing, but only slightly, up only $2.4 million in total in that time frame, an average of 1.6% increases per year. At that time, the staff and the council framed this primarily as a revenue issue, that our revenues are not keeping pace with expenses. And it was very odd or rare that we would say that because for so long we've been focusing on expense control. And we know that it's very important to this council and this community to look very carefully at our expenses, analyze them, and look for ways to control them or cut them before we even consider any changes to our revenue portfolio. So we'll take up the story from there. We're doing exactly that. First, it's important to note that in the last 10 years, we have had a commitment to cost control, a culture of lean, efficiency, innovation, cost cutting, and staff reduction. It's what we do. I think we do it quite well. We don't talk a lot about it, but it's sort of in the DNA of the staff. It's certainly in the DNA of the council. So we want to start by looking at our expenses by department in the general fund. Let's start with the bottom line, general fund expenses, comparing 2008's right before the recession to 2017, our current budget year. And you'll find that in that 9-year period, our general fund expenses have gone up in total only by 11%. That is an average of 1.2%. So very much controlled expenses. We also want to show where the money is being spent by department. And you'll see police department, fire department, public works, community development, and then all of the departments. What you'll find is expenses have increased by 21% and 29% in our public safety departments. And you'll see significant declines in expenses in both public works and especially in all other departments, a decline of 21%. So how are we able to achieve such cost control and expense reductions? The primary thing is the reduction of staff. In that 9-year period, you see here in staffing by department between 2008 and 2017. The first thing you'll note is during that time we reduced full-time equivalent staffing from 375 to 309, about a 17% reduction. On the far right-hand side of the whiteboard, we've actually listed every single position that we've eliminated in that time frame. It is an extremely expansive list, and it hits every single department. In fact, this column right here shows the percent reduction in staffing by department. Our police staffing has been reduced by 22%. Fire department by 9%. Public works, 13%. Community development, 13%. And in all of the departments, 28%. This is an extensive amount of staff reduction, and we're still always looking for opportunities to reduce costs. through staff reductions and trying to find more innovative ways to provide the same or better service with fewer people at a lower cost. So how is it that we can have staffing going down by double digits and still have double-digit increases, especially in our valued public safety departments, police and fire, clearly one of our core services? And what we found through the analysis here is the number one cost driver for the general fund expense increases is the cost of providing public safety pension contributions. Again, these are required by state law, and the formulas are set by the state. What we found here, comparing 2008 to 2017, is a 177% increase in the required public safety pension contributions. In stark contrast to what we've been able to hold on the bottom line. We know, based on information we have, that this number will increase by at least $216,000 with the next levy in 2018 to make required contributions. And it could increase by another $474,000 in that same 2018 if the pension boards change their assumptions in their model, and then we would be required to levy an additional amount. So when you take a step back, it's clear that this is a key expense driver. In fact, when you look at the $4.7 million of the total increase between 2008 and 2017, 80% of it is due only to public safety pension contributions. The point here is that we often look for ways to control expenses. If we are looking for ways to meaningfully and sustainably control expenses, it would have to be changes that affect public safety services, because that's where the costs are. I know it was important to the council to demonstrate our commitment to cost cutting before we even look at revenues. And I think if you look at these numbers, the list of positions cut on the far right, on my far left, whiteboard over here to your right, is the expense reduction efforts that have coincided with the staffing reductions. They are also extensive. So we want to demonstrate to the council and the community that we have and will continue to control expenses through these measures. Which then allows us to move on to revenue trends. This is a table we had up on the board in February when we identified the issue. It's our major revenue sources in our general fund for multiple years going back. Suffice to say, without going through every number on here, anytime you see a number in red is lower than the previous year. What is the point? 2 key points. Let's look at our bottom line. For 4 of the last 5 years, total revenues have been actually going down. Again, this is exclusive of the public safety pension levy. So total revenues down for the last 5 years. And a little closer look, I drew this box around our top 4 revenue sources: sales tax, property tax, utility tax, and state shared income tax. Those are our top 4. They've actually all been down or flat in the last 2 years. This is a trend we see continuing. Sales tax, we think, will continue to drop due to changes in how people shop and where they shop, more online activities. And income taxes, we think, will drop because of changes in state tax policy and trends we see in those issues. So, with that, we think we have a revenue issue, and we're looking for changes in our revenue sources that match our modern economy. The staff recommendation is to enact a 1% food and beverage tax. This is a tax that would be applied when you're eating out. Think of going to restaurants, eating and drinking establishments is what the state calls them. They would be restaurants. If we were to enact a 1% food and beverage tax, if we had it on our books in 2016, it would have generated $1.5 million. So that is a significant revenue source. We think this is a revenue source that we should consider to address our revenue issues for these reasons. Number one, it's a large amount of money. $1.5 million is a significant amount and will go a long way to solving our gap. Number two, it is a growing revenue source consistent with the changing economy. Look at the numbers and trends since 2010. It's up at an average of about 4% a year. And it looks, all indications are this will continue to grow. Number three, it's progressive. Most people eating out and this tax would choose to spend their money at this place. But we don't think, we think it's actually very inelastic, does not, any increase in tax does not have a detrimental impact on the amount of sales. And the fourth reason, it's comparable to other communities around DuPage County, particularly Lombard, Naperville, and Elmhurst all have a similar tax. And then, if necessary, if the food and beverage tax is not enough to fill the gap, we would recommend increasing our levy for operations as necessary. We have not increased the levy for operations in 4 or 5 years running. The levy itself is actually quite small as a percentage of our total revenue. It's about $5.85 million. So each 1% increase in the levy amount is $58,500 in total revenue. What does that mean for a total house, total impact on a typical house? Well, a typical house pays about $560 a year to the village for the general fund operations levy. 1% is about $5.60 per household. I went through this very quickly, but again, all this information is online, and all the council members have been briefed individually, actually a couple times before this meeting. We're happy to answer any questions the council and the community has. But with that, I'd like to turn it back over to the mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate the very thorough presentation, the history, and all the details, because I think in 3 whiteboards, you've really been able to capture a lot of information that is directly pertinent to what's it's a big decision, obviously, not that others aren't, but this is something that I think needs to be framed properly to understand it. Number one, in my mind, that this is not about the village needing more money and trying to find places to get new revenue. It's really about trying to replace lost revenue, and just so we can stay the same because of shifts in the economy and shifts in consumer behavior, which is important, because that brings me to my second point. What's been proposed as a solution has been around for a long time, and it didn't necessarily fit with our needs or our community or what our surrounding neighbors were doing. And so it wasn't something that was explored, because primarily sales tax in the traditional sense was performing under the economic and consumer behavior trends at the time in a way that was helping us to meet our objectives, whereas there clearly have been trends in commercial behavior, consumer behavior, economic trends with online sales, so on and so forth, where for reasons beyond our control, revenue that we typically would capture is being lost outside of our reach. And so this is sort of a shift to try to follow or anticipate those continuing changes to capture and replace revenue that we're losing because of those changes. So I think we have to try to adapt as best we can, and we really waited until we absolutely have to, as I think you very well demonstrated. Plus, this is something that would capture, like sales tax does, dollars from non-residents. So it's something that we get to grab dollars from other places, no different than our neighbors are grabbing from our residents when they visit Lombard, Naperville, or Elmhurst, which brings me to my last point. I know years ago, one of my concerns when this was proposed some time ago was that, well, we don't want to be the only ones surrounded by an island of those who don't, because that might make us less competitive. Well, again, going back to the theme of change, the environment has changed around us. Where now one can argue that we're leaving money on the table in comparison to some of our neighbors. And frankly, someone on 22nd Street who's visiting from outside of the area doesn't know whether they're dining and shopping in Lombard or in Downers Grove, and Lombard gets the money and we don't. So while obviously we've tried very, very hard in the last 6 years and demonstrated, and then some, to not only keep costs down rather successfully, but not make increases just for the sake of making increases. Clearly, this trend in sales tax is not this is a chronic issue. This isn't a short-term problem, and I think we've got to address it. Otherwise, we're going to have much more difficult decisions to make. So I appreciate you framing it, and it's just the time is appropriately come. So I don't have any questions about it. I understand it. It's, again, the food and beverage tax is a concept that's been discussed in various degrees for the last 15 years. But I think that now, given where we're at in the macroeconomic environment, I think it makes sense. So
what others think or questions we have. I don't have any questions about the numbers or how this operates or the history. I hate to say it, it's not like a broken record, but I've kind of lived it.
I'd like to be quite retired. I was in Bugles earlier, so I turned my microphone around.
The bugles are so people can hear you. Hold them up and talk.
Yes, the purpose of this meeting, this is a question. The purpose of this meeting is to give guidance for preparation of the 18 budget?
The 18 budget and beyond is
Beyond,
to
yeah.
set us on a course to enhance our revenues to try to achieve sustainability in the general fund. So we'd be looking for council direction on, is this a way we should go to start to achieve sustainability by enhancing revenues?
I wouldn't call it enhancing revenues. I would call it maintaining revenues.
Maintaining
We're not enhancing
from a
anything.
bottom line perspective.
We got a hole that's been created because of the shift in economic activity.
Yeah, overall revenue, overall tax revenue received by the village will not increase as a kind of this proposal.
Right.
We're simply shifting it from one
This isn't
category to
real money.
another.
This is treading water.
Now, there's a lot to this. I've spent a lot of time looking at this. I concur with Mayor Tully. I think this is the right way to maintain revenue at the existing levels.
The 1% food and beverage tax, that's just at restaurants. What about prepared food in grocery stores or liquor sales? Or is that rolled into this?
Prepared foods at grocery stores would be subject to it.
What about liquor?
It would take if you bought liquor for on-site consumption at a restaurant, it would be subject to it.
Regular groceries are already captured in sales tax
Correct.
and packaged liquor.
But your sales tax.
Deli,
on food and beverage
potato
anyways.
salads, all that kind of stuff, you say on grocery.
I think we'd have to double check, but I think
Okay.
that is grocery. And of course, the line between groceries and prepared foods gets closer all the time, but we could double check where those lines are.
Good news is someone's already drawn them.
Yes.
Not that that would make or break a decision like this. I think loss of retail sales tax, and it's not just a loss of retail, but it's also the growth of restaurants. Instead of getting retail places, we're getting restaurant places.
Well, that's a good point, because to the extent that economic development, we attract certain businesses in order to generate revenue streams beyond property taxes. One could look at it that way as well. I actually hadn't thought of it before. That's interesting.
And the home rule sales tax is also the same sales point of charging the 40,000 or so people that stop in during the day and then go somewhere else.
You're going to get more restaurants in town.
Well, we should look at the growth in the food and beverage subcategories compared to our town versus neighboring towns. That could be really interesting to look at.
Good point. For another day. Great.
Thanks, Mayor. First off, thanks for the presentation. When you put it all in this very specific relief, it really gets rather stark. I mean, the number of positions eliminated, the expense reduction efforts, the consolidations, privatizations, changes to health benefits, et cetera. I mean, I don't think there's another stone unturned. And nobody wants to go down the road of whether we want to say we're replacing revenue or enhancing revenue or creating a new tax or following along with the economy, whatever it is. We all would prefer not to go down this road and be having this conversation. All of that said, I think when you look at the alternatives of additional cuts coming at the expense of the public safety end of things, I think it's something I'm not interested in. I think this is the remaining alternative that makes sense.
I think the purpose of my questions prior to this meeting was really, we're going to have to sell this to our residents and our businesses. And we always compare, our attempts to cost cut and how we try to keep our revenues level. Now we have to have the increases. But in the meantime, the cost of our electricity, our phones, all these things that we live with every day are going up. And what I was trying to get at was, these things go up and everybody just pays for the new cable bill. Maybe they don't, but I mean, you know, the cable bill goes up and, you know, you keep paying the cable bill. But then when you say, hey, give me another $5 so that when you pick up the phone and call the police, they show up, you know, that's a different $5, right? Oh, I don't want to pay that, but I'll pay for, you know, HBO or whatever, or just to keep cable, basic cable, whatever. So I think maybe at some point we need to start comparing what we haven't been collecting for the last 5 years and compare it to some of the things that people are just paying routinely and not really thinking about it.
Yeah, I think that's actually it's a matter, I believe there's too widespread of an opinion that people are not getting fair value for their taxes, and I believe that's wrong. I believe the people in this community get excellent fire protection, they get excellent police protection.
Couldn't get much better by the ratings.
Exactly, and they take it for granted that somehow it's free. And that's, nothing's free. You know, so I think the fact that, I just feel this is sort of a little larger philosophical point. As a member of this board, if we return fair value to the taxpayers for the money we impose in taxation, we've done our job. And the job is, do we deliver fair value? And I think looking at all of this, there's no question that this village delivers fair value for the tax dollars that are collected in terms of public safety, fire and police.
I'd agree with that a little bit. The culture has traditionally been very fiscally conservative in this town. I think this history dictates, before we've even discussed this as a serious option, that that culture, philosophy, whatever you want to call it, has been met by any measure, that's for sure. Just one other thing I want to mention, Commissioner Waller, you mentioned that input of the businesses, and we could probably get it more formally, but I happen to know informally, in conversations with leadership of Chamber 630, which covers down in Grove and obviously beyond, that there is support for this. Now, I can't say that I've polled every single business that was a member of the Chamber, but leadership has indicated that and has welcomed if we were to ask for a more formal expression of that. What I mean by this, I mean the food and beverage tax, because I think businesses recognize the same economic environment and shifting consumer behavior that we're seeing here, not only occurring, but becoming a chronic and long-term trend, for whatever that's worth.
I don't disagree with anything you said. Protection being yesterday. But I would suggest we're not enough. There's no reason to expect staffing to continue around 17%. And that 11% increase in that same period has absolutely been withheld by trust board. It's been diminished as a function of staffing. So if you assume, just for the sake of creating a model, staffing levels were appropriate today, they were as low as they could be today, they were as low as our residents would stand for, the service delivery provided today, that 11% is a much bigger number because it's been held back.
Artificially suppressed through a lot of effort.
Artificially suppressed, that's right. And so you combine that, with the fact that we don't have control of prevention, this is probably not enough. I support food and beverage tax, and I think we need to probably be more aggressive with other revenue sources. In 2009 or whatever, we had a list of them that we were considering. I think we ought to all think through those. None of them are fun. Nobody likes to talk about anything about targeted money, but this is artificially suppressed. And there's no reason to expect that suppression to go forward. And that's a bad problem. I think it requires more than food and beverage tax. I think it requires more than a casual conversation now about increasing levy on local operations. It involves additional revenue sources, and I think it still involves consideration of whether or not there's additional service level changes that can be made.
points there. I think this warrants particular special consideration because we're introducing a new revenue component. And while it's certainly a replacement, it's a new component. The ones that we already have, and as well as the expense side of the ledger, certainly things that we can and should discuss every year as part of our budget process. And I just you know, and so everyone else understands, I think anyone's suggesting that when we get to our annual budget process, and I'm hoping we're looking forward to going through that, that the usual conversations on both the expense and the revenue side should be discussed. I just would suggest that we do that as part of the normal preparation and process and engagement in the community that we can go through in any way, but yes.
Those are kind of marginal, with all due respect.
I'm sorry?
Those are kind of nipping at the margins.
Well, they don't have to. They don't have to. They've been artificially suppressed.
They don't have to, you're right, they obviously don't have to be, but the experience.
I'm just talking about the timing.
And that's what I'm talking about. The timing, when we start talking about 2018 budgets as a function of engaging the public in the budget process, it would be entirely out of character for this group to be discussing substantial policy changes. Those conversations are typically, where do we want to move work in these margins of this sort of policy directions, a function of LRP that's already been in play. And I'm just concerned the math is not in. What we're talking about is a fix that takes us a year or two, probably. But those other growth things are, does anybody think the food and beverage tax is going to go from 1.5 million to 6.5 million?
No. I agree with you. I'm just simply saying that I think that that's a process that we ought to, just because we dealt with the budget process in a certain way, because we've been, to the grace of staff's, I don't want to say Herculean, but close,
that's good work.
efforts that we haven't had to for 6 some years. And I think 2 years ago we said we were going to run out, and somehow you've been able to keep pulling rabbits out of the hat.
Some of us have.
Yes, I did say that, but I think that conversation can be had, and maybe it's a multi-year conversation, but I don't see a reason why we can't pick it up as part of the budget process. We have 2 new voices.
So one thing to consider is, I'm hearing the general direction from the council that yes, this is a good way to go, a necessary good way to go to address the issue.
Does anyone disagree?
To Commissioner Barnett's point in the discussion that's happening now, this may not be enough, because we're not exactly sure, these are estimates here from the 2017 column. If we, through monitoring not only revenues and expenses, realize that the solutions talked about tonight are not sufficient even for 2018, we will immediately bring back discussions and start them early. We've already started on the 2018 budget because we think it's going to be a challenge. So I guess what we're saying is if we foresee the need for further enhancements to get through 2018, 2019, we will have that discussion early and in this planning fashion, not just in a year-by-year budget, which I think is what I'm hearing going on here. So we'll get an early start.
Yes.
Well, in all fairness too, this is a totally new animal for us at Food and Beverage Tax. So it's going to take you guys some time to get it all together and up and running so that we can implement it by, I'm guessing, the first of the year.
Right.
And where everything else is already in place and it's just that we're going to deal with it, it's just be tweaking it. So this is going to have a much longer lead time than the others.
On the logistics, it gets reported the same as sales tax, but it's just another line on the sales tax return the businesses file every quarter, or is there a separate tax return for it?
It appears, based on our research from communities that already have this, there would be a required local filing, and we would require them to also submit their ST1 forms that go to the state.
So it's not remitted to the state and refunded to be paid directly to the village?
Paid directly to the village.
Which by itself is a
Wow.
Which is actually a benefit as well, though, because it's very transparent and it's within our direct control, which is a good thing.
Because the state has had a habit of withholding things just because they can.
We're changing the calculations and what you get every funded 2 years.
Well, There's a new attack on LGDF, if you haven't heard. But I digress. Open it
Not
up-
really. 'Cause that's-
Continued or
that's-
new?
that's the-
That's income.
It's not really a digression.
Not to cut off comments here, but questions or comments from folks in the audience?
I have a couple questions. On the public safety pension information there, the may increase, is that in addition to the 216?
Yes, sir.
So the total is 7 plus.
Could be as high as 735,000 as a worst-case scenario for 2018. And that would be, just to reiterate, the 216,000 is a number we already know due to the actuarial reports that have been filed with the pension boards. If the pension boards decide to change the rate of return for their investments in their model, with the assumptions for the return of their investment, by 0.25% in both boards, it would go up by another 474,000.
You know what the quarter is relative to? 4%?
Currently, the model has 7.25%, and they're discussing, both boards are discussing lowering their returns to 7%. That decision has not yet been made.
When you deal with these pension obligations, you just do it on an annual basis as opposed to looking at it further out, when your applications longer term?
Both pension boards in the village staff and the village council, so all four groups, have a long-range, long-term approach to these types of projections and policy and decision-making. That's been a recent improvement in our pension boards. They've always done a fabulous job. They both recently hired new actuaries who have done a tremendous job about taking a longer-term view. In fact, the discussion they're having has to do with what are the impacts of smoothing any increase over a multi-year period.
Part of the reason I ask is I think it speaks, or what I'm hearing is that it speaks to Commissioner Barnett's concern about is what is being discussed tonight sufficient and what the ramifications are depending on the consequences of not just whatever the decision is now, but if they continue to change the assumption. I mean, obviously, that's going to continue the discussion.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, thanks for sticking it out.
Well, I have a related question now. What's the ramification if you go to the other recommendation that you're suggesting? How much would you have to, how do you gauge how much you would have to raise?
We've traditionally, the councils have viewed raising the levy for operations as the last adjustment to any revenue to balance.
Well, I understand that. But what I'm trying to ask is, how do you gauge how much you'd actually have to raise it depending on the service?
Well, we calculate what our budgeted revenues are and expenses are each year. And this, now we would include this and adjust it.
By a multiple of 50,000.
Give or take. We
Right.
could, the interesting thing about property tax levy for municipalities in Illinois is that the council gets to decide the exact levy amount, the levy a dollar amount. So they could literally, as a council, we could look at, well, how much do we need to fill any gap? And the council could choose to levy that. Which speaks to why it's actually been flat over the last several years, because there hasn't been a need in any particular year to make any change.
Am I correct in recalling the prior comment in this body that if there were to be some sort of property tax freeze at the state level, that that's immaterial to this conversation of village levy?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, because it takes away your ability to have these kind of conversations and decide whether you want to use that as a tool. Basically, a freeze, a permanent one, or whatever the heck they're calling it these days, would just take that off the table. You'd have to be forced to either do without or go to other sources.
Haven't most of those conversations, though, had carve-outs for pension contributions?
Most of them have, but I've seen some that haven't.
But some haven't. It's kind of been bouncing around like a ball on a roulette wheel.
Certainly not known, but most of the dialogue is
Right, well, that would be, well, right, that would be a disaster, if we're being forced to add $1 million every year, and then there's a freeze, and we can't even go pay it. But it would also take away your flexibility if there wasn't a if it was only for public safety employee pensions. You wouldn't have any flexibility to make choices as a community, but whether you wanted to put any of that on your operations or other capital expenditures on your property tax levy. You'd be stuck with what you have. Or making real changes.
And is it also the case that these increases are to keep the level of funding obligations to the fund at the level they are present? They're not changing that percentage?
They're actually moving towards a target, a funded amount of 100% funded by a multi-year period out, which I think is 2040. So there's a specific target, 100% funded by 2040, and that's what the models are based on. By state law.
By state law?
Correct.
Yes.
Is it shooting for 100% by 2040?
Yes.
The state law reads 90% funded by 2040. Our policy is to shoot for 100%.
Yeah, like needing bankruptcy, like that.
Yeah, welcome to the nightmare, said Alice Cooper.
In 2040, there'd be a nice nest egg much larger than is needed.
This time.
What do you fund it at now, roughly?
In the mid-50s. The interesting thing there is they've been on one of the measures of the financial health, one of the measures of many is the percent funded. We're actually significantly higher a couple of years ago. We've been making more than the minimum required payment for the state, and the funding percentage keeps dropping due to changes in the model. That's why you hear people say words like not sustainable.
So there, on that positive note. Thanks for the questions and comments. Any closing thoughts, questions from the council? I think direction was pretty clear.
Very clear direction. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, well, with that, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Good night. Thank you.